Welcome to Buddhism Seeds, where ancient Zen stories are retold through the breath of the present moment. For thousands of years, Zen masters have whispered a secret that peace is not something to be found outside, but something that has always been waiting within. These teachings are not distant or abstract. They don't demand blind faith, nor ask you to become someone else. They simply invite you to pause, to breathe, and to listen. Before we begin, you may wish to share what time is it where you are, and from where in the world are you listening, because every place, every moment, is just another breath in the rhythm of life itself. Tonight we will enter the journey of Zen Master Genshu, the one who survived after his ancient temple burned down. He left with nothing but a single white thread, a gift from his teacher, before passing away, a symbol of the stillness that connects all things of the unchanging essence amid all that fades. Along his long road, Genshu sought nothing. He only listened to the wind, to the water, and to the quiet voice within. And in those moments of silence, he discovered the light of letting go of impermanence, of compassion, and of karma transformed. As you listen to this journey, you don't need to understand everything or strive toward enlightenment. Just let the story flow through you, like gentle rain washing away the dust of the day, bringing you back to your breath, your body, and your natural peace. Let your shoulders soften. Take a deep breath in. Feel every cell begin to relax. The world outside may still move and shift, but in this moment, there is only you, your breath, and the silence unfolding. The journey of the silent thread begins here. That night, the mountains surrounding the old temple sighed beneath clouds of smoke. The wind roared through the pines, carrying ashes of years of meditation, dimming the moonlight. In the heart of the flames, Genshu stood still, watching the main hall collapse, wood beams, cracking bells, shattering Buddha statues, falling into a blaze of orange and gold. Everything he once called home turned to ash. In his hand remained only one thing, the white thread his master had given him before passing away. No gold, no scriptures, only that fragile thread, light as nothing. He once thought his master was testing him. But now, amid the ruins and smoke, a question rose from deep within. When everything I cling to disappears, what remains? The fire had destroyed the temple, but what hurt him more was the emptiness left inside. After all his years of practice, he was still unprepared for this, the moment when there was nowhere left to lean on. He sat among the ashes, holding the thread, and whispered, "Perhaps when everything is taken away, it's an invitation to see what has always been true." At dawn, with smoke still rising from the scorched ground, Genshu left the temple. He carried nothing but the white thread, no goal, no destination, only steps, each one a prayer whispered through the ashes of the past. The bells were gone. The wind through the old roof tiles was gone. Only the sound of his feet remained, blending with the breath of morning mist. On the mountain path, the pines still smelled faintly of smoke. Genshu looked back where his temple had stood for half a lifetime now, only a black heap of ash. But there was no bitterness in his eyes. They were calm, like a lake after the storm. He walked downhill. Each step sank slightly into the soft, ashy earth. The wind carried the scent of burnt wood mixed with pine soil and the quiet perfume of endings. The white thread swung gently in his hand, thin as mist, fragile, yet strangely steadfast. It was the last gift from his master, who had once said, "This thread connects silence to all things." At the time, Genshu didn't understand. At the foot of the mountain, he met a young boy tending buffalo sitting on a rock by the stream. The clear water sparkled with morning light. The boy, hair messy and feet muddy, was floating blades of grass down the stream, watching them drift. When he saw Genshu passing by, he looked up, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Old man," he called, "why are you walking without carrying anything?" Genshu stopped and gazed at the boy as if seeing his own younger self reflected in that innocent gaze before his mind had been burdened by ideas of right and wrong, gain and loss. He replied slowly, his voice as soft as wind through leaves, "I lost everything last night. My temple burned down, my scriptures turned to ash, my brothers went their own ways. Now this is all I have left." He opened his hand. In his palm, the white thread shimmered in sunlight. The boy tilted his head, examining it. "Just a thread. Why keep it? It's worthless." Genshu smiled gently with a touch of sadness. "Perhaps. It can buy nothing. But it reminds me that everything I once tried to hold, no matter how precious, is just as fragile as this." The boy fell silent, his eyes thoughtful. "Then, aren't you sad losing everything like that?" Genshu looked toward the distant mountains cloaked in clouds. After a pause, he said quietly, "Of course I am. But that sadness was like the fire, it burned itself out. Now only its warmth remains." The boy smiled, then picked up a fallen yellow leaf. He placed it on the water and watched it drift, spinning gently downstream. "What floats away," he murmured, "should be allowed to go. The water never tries to hold the leaf, no matter how beautiful it is." Genshu stood still. That simple truth from a nameless child rang within him like a temple bell. No philosophy, no reasoning, just pure clarity. He watched the leaf float away, then looked down at the thread in his hand. It was as thin as breath, as delicate as the line between holding and letting go. Then he realized he was still holding it. He opened his hand. A soft breeze rose. The white thread lifted into the sunlight, drifted down, and landed gently on the water. It glimmered as it floated, merging with the reflection of the clouds. The boy exclaimed, "Look, it's going to find its way to the sea." Genshu laughed, a clear, unburdened laugh from a place in his heart he hadn't touched in years. Yes, perhaps everything was simply finding its way home. Even this white thread not lost, just returning to where it belonged, just like him, walking back to himself. The wind carried the scent of grass and the rhythm of flowing water. In that moment, he no longer felt like a man who had lost everything but a part of something vast, where gain and loss had no meaning. He turned to the boy and said softly, "Thank you. Today I learned what I couldn't see for many years." "I didn't teach you," the boy laughed. "The water taught us both." They watched the stream together, the leaf and the thread drifting side by side, glowing in the dawn light. Above them, larks began to sing. A new day had begun, not promising anything and needing no promise. It simply began. Genshu placed his palms together and bowed to the water. In his heart, the temple was no longer ashes. It had come alive again, not in bricks or bronze, but in the quiet awakening blooming within him. He walked on lighter this time. Each step left only a gentle trace on the wet grass, as if the earth itself was carrying him. Behind him, the stream sang on, and the child's voice echoed faintly, "What floats away, let it go." Genshu smiled. He knew his journey had only just begun, not to seek anything but to learn how to stay in each breath like the white thread, fragile, yet quietly connecting everything into one. Genshu's story is more than the burning of a temple. It is a symbol of the collapse of everything we once believed was ours. That temple might be your career, your relationship, your reputation, or even the self-image you've built over years. When it burns, we panic because we believed peace lived within those walls. But the fire of impermanence doesn't come to punish it, comes to free. It burns away illusion so we can see the clear, empty, luminous truth beneath. The Buddha once taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purity. In modern life, we too have our own temples, our dream homes, our jobs, our relationships, our identities. When one of them collapses, we often fall into panic, insomnia, anxiety, emptiness. Neuroscience calls this the disruption of self-schema. When our self-image breaks, the brain reacts as if a part of the body has been lost. That pain in your chest isn't just a metaphor, it's real. But when you observe that pain with mindfulness, you begin to see beneath all the noise. There's still a foundation of stillness, like the sky, that remains after the clouds have drifted away. If you've ever lost something or are moving through difficulty, now let the image of Genshu guide you tonight. You don't need to fight the ashes. You don't need to rebuild the old temple within you. Just sit down, breathe deeply, and feel the breath as a slender thread connecting you to life itself. Breathe in, knowing you are still here. Breathe out, releasing what no longer needs to stay. Your breath is your true temple. It cannot burn. It cannot be lost. It needs no walls. Before sleep, place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm, like a distant temple bell. Each beat a reminder I am still here. I can begin again. Let your body melt into the bed like ashes into the wind. Let your mind stop searching for answers. For the deepest rest comes only when you stop trying to become someone. Genshu's lesson is not about loss, but about what remains after losing. The white thread is the symbol of mindfulness, delicate, simple, yet unbreakable, once held with awareness. When you accept impermanence, you stop fearing loss. When you learn to let go, you stop being bound by what's leaving. And when you see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher, you'll find that even in ashes, new life is already rising. A study from Harvard University once found that those who practice mindful acceptance show significantly reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's stress center, allowing the body to enter deep rest more quickly. That means when you let go, your body truly begins to heal. Night fell. Genshu sat by the stream, the white thread resting softly in his hand. The sound of water murmured, as if telling a story he had not yet fully understood. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "If all things are impermanent, can I learn to love within each fleeting moment?" As he walked down the narrow trail toward the foothills, the moonlight touched the thread in his hand, making it glow like a trail of starlight. His journey began once more. By early dawn, the mountains were still covered in mist. The stream where Genshu had sat the night before continued to murmur, carrying the faint scent of last night's ashes. He kept walking, the white thread still held gently in his palm. The path led him into a valley, where the first rays of sunlight filtered through the thin smoke, making everything shimmer like a dream. In his heart, one question from the night before remained. If all things are impermanent, how can we learn to love without fear of loss? That question followed him the whole way. Sometimes Genshu paused beside wild chrysanthemums swaying in the wind and wondered perhaps they understood impermanence better than humans because they bloomed without fearing they would fade. As the afternoon light tilted westward, Genshu reached a small village by the mountain slope. The steady sound of hammering came from a wooden house. Inside was an old potter attentively shaping clay on his wheel. The sunlight fell across rows of earthen pots, reflecting shades of brown-green and faint cracks that shone like silver threads. The potter looked up, saw Genshu at the doorway, and smiled kindly. "Please rest a while, traveler. The mountain road is long and dusty." Genshu nodded and sat by the porch. He glanced around and noticed one pot on the shelf had a large crack down its side. He asked, "Why not throw that one away? It seems useless now." The potter smiled, his voice deep yet gentle. "I thought about that once, but every time I tried to discard it, I stopped." He poured water into the cracked pot, and slowly the water began to drip through drop by drop onto the ground. "You see," he said, "the water that seeps through this crack moistens the flower bed below. Because of it, the flowers outside my workshop always bloom. If the pot were perfect, they would never thrive." Genshu sat silently. In the sound of dripping water, something began to echo within him. The potter continued, "I've worked with clay my whole life. Every time I shape a vessel, I aim for perfection. But no matter how careful I am, some will crack, some will warp. I used to get angry smashing the ones that weren't right. Only when I grew old did I finally understand nothing truly endures. Earth, fire, water, each changes form. If we cling to perfection, we'll end up breaking ourselves." He placed his rough, calloused hand on the cracked pot. "It reminds me that everything born has its own destiny, and its worth doesn't lie in appearance, but in how it carries water even for just a moment." Genshu bowed in gratitude. His eyes lingered on the damp flowers below the pot petals, trembling lightly, reflecting the sunset as if smiling. When he left the workshop, the white thread in his hand felt lighter, as if his heart had shed a small weight. The potter's story is a profound lesson on impermanence. We live in a world that constantly changes, yet we long for everything to stay the same. We try to hold on to the people we love, our work, our youth, our reputation, as if all could last forever, if we just tried hard enough. But like clay on a spinning wheel, life never stops moving. Impermanence doesn't come to take away happiness. It comes to return truth, that this moment is all that's truly alive. The cracked pot is a mirror of ourselves. Each of us has our own fractures, wounds, regrets, fears, mistakes. We try to hide them to patch them up. But in truth, it's through those very cracks that light enters. Zen teaches us to witness what breaks without rushing to fix it. Because when we look deeply, we see nothing is truly lost. It only changes form. Water flows through the pot's cracks, yet it doesn't disappear. It becomes rain that feeds flowers. Likewise, your pain doesn't make you lesser. It opens new pathways for understanding and compassion to grow. In modern psychology, this is known as resilient acceptance, the flexible ability to adapt. When we stop resisting change, the body and mind naturally find balance. Studies show that people who mindfully accept loss have steadier heart rhythms, lower stress hormones, and fall asleep more easily at night. If you've ever felt broken, remember the potter. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be honest with yourself. Before you sleep, imagine yourself as a vessel holding the water of breath. Breathe in, feel warmth flowing through every crack in your body. Breathe out, let that water flow out, nurturing the dry corners of your heart. Let the breath slow. Let the mind soften. Every fracture, every mistake, every loss is proof that you have lived, have loved, and are learning to grow. Your breath is the potter's wheel. Each rotation is another chance to reshape yourself, not through force, but through gentle awareness. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one no longer suffers. To see impermanence doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means learning to love fully within the limits of time. To love as if you already know you will one day have to let go. And precisely because you know you will let go, you love with your whole presence. The potter's lesson is the art of living with imperfection. No one walks through life uncracked. But if we know how to pour compassion through those cracks, we can make the whole garden of the heart bloom again. Sleep researchers have also found that when people practice gratitude reflection, remembering what they're thankful for, even the hardships that made them stronger, the brain's waves shift toward alpha frequencies, helping the body relax and drift naturally into sleep. In other words, when we stop hating our past, we finally open the door to true rest. Evening descended. Genshu left the village carrying with him the image of the cracked pot and the green flowers by the window. He walked on his heart light as the thin smoke rising from the potter's roof. On the path, he heard the distant chime of a bell echoing from a small temple on the other side of the mountain. The sound faded into the wind, yet it stirred a memory. Something his teacher had once said, "Not everyone has eyes to see, but everyone has a heart to feel." And so he turned his steps toward the source of the sound. The valley wind rose carrying the scent of damp grass and the faint bell tone. Genshu followed the dirt road through a grove of bamboo. The sunset fell upon the white thread in his hand, making it glimmer like a sliver of moonlight. The bell rang again, not fast, not slow like the steady breath of the earth itself. He paused on a small hill, closed his eyes, and felt a deep stillness settle within him. But then, as the bell grew quiet, he heard soft footsteps behind him. A gentle voice asked, "Sir, which way is the temple?" He opened his eyes. Before him stood a young woman, eyes half closed, holding a bamboo cane. She could not see him. Her eyes were blind. Genshu answered softly, "At the end of this path, just past the small bridge." The woman smiled, bowed slightly, and continued on her way. Genshu watched her go, a mixture of wonder and tenderness rising in his chest. He thought, a person who cannot see can still hear the bell, but those who can see sometimes hear nothing at all. A question rippled through him like a pebble dropped into still water. When one sense is lost, does the heart grow deeper? And we who think we can see, are we not often blind to the pain of others? The next day, Genshu arrived at the temple from which the bell had rung. It was small, resting beside a quiet stream. Only a few elderly monks and a handful of orphans lived there. The air was thick with the scent of incense pine and wood smoke, a fragrance of peace as though this place had never known haste. In the soft morning light, the temple appeared humble, moss-covered tiles, cracked walls, yet warm like compassion itself, breathing through the old bricks. In the courtyard, Genshu saw a blind girl sitting beside a great bronze bell. Her hands moved slowly, carefully wiping each carved line, each small indentation along its surface. Her movements were tender, reverent, as though she were touching something sacred, reading its memories with her fingertips. The silence was so deep that only the faint sound of the cloth brushing metal and the nearby stream's murmur could be heard. Genshu stepped closer and asked quietly, "What are you doing?" The girl turned her face toward him, tilting her head slightly, listening to the tone of his voice. Sunlight filtered through the willow branches, casting a golden glow upon her face. Her clouded eyes seemed to shine. "I'm listening with my hands," she said. "When I clean the bell, I can feel its voice even before it rings." Genshu froze for a moment. Listening with hands. The phrase echoed in him like a Zen koan, paradoxical yet deeply true. He sat down beside her. Between them stood the ancient bell darkened by time. Each time her fingers touched the bronze, the faintest hum arose, not quite a sound, more like a breath of metal trembling and vanishing into the wind. Yet in that fragile vibration, something inside Genshu began to resonate, as if it wasn't the bell that was ringing, but his own heart. The girl told him she had been blind since childhood. The monks had raised her, teaching her to read, to meditate, to sense the world through what remained. She was the one who struck the bell every dawn and dusk. Someone had once asked her, "If you can't see, how do you know when to ring it?" She smiled a gentle, luminous smile that carried more wisdom than sight ever could. "When my heart is calm," she said, "the bell rings by itself. But when my heart is restless, no matter how many times I strike, it will not sound true." Her words silenced Genshu. He had once been the bellkeeper at a great monastery. He thought he understood bells, that if the force and position were right, the tone would be perfect. But never had he heard anyone speak of the bell with such profound awareness. He remembered all his years of meditation, chanting and teaching, all the times he'd heard the bell without truly listening. "Perhaps," he thought, "I have only ever heard with my ears, not with my heart." He asked softly, afraid to disturb the quiet around them, "How do you know when your heart is calm?" The girl placed her hand gently on the bell and smiled. "When I stop trying to make it calm." A soft breeze stirred, brushing a few strands of hair across her forehead, and in that moment, Genshu felt a serenity radiating from her, gentle and luminous. She continued, her voice low and rhythmic, like a sutra. "The bell does not sing when struck too hard. It rings clear and full only when touched by a hand that knows compassion." At those words, Genshu heard the voice of his old master, simple yet sharp, piercing through the dust of years of formal practice. He looked at the girl, blind, yet seeing what he never had. He realized then that she lacked nothing. She saw the world in another way, through the sensitivity of the heart, while so many with clear eyes wander blind to the simplest truth, that sound is true only when born from stillness and peace, is real only when we stop trying to create it. The girl raised her hand and gently struck the bell once, The sound that followed was not loud, not strong, but so pure that it seemed the whole forest paused to listen. The vibration spread outward, touching the leaves, the water, the hearts of all beings. Genshu felt each wave dissolve into the air, not disappearing, but merging with him. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. In that breath, he understood the bell's sound doesn't come only from metal. It comes from the stillness within each being. The girl turned toward him, sensing something had shifted. "Now you understand, don't you?" she said. Genshu nodded softly. "Yes, now I truly hear the bell." She smiled, bowed her head, and continued polishing. He stood quietly, palms together. Before leaving, he looked back, the blind girl bathed in morning light, her hands moving over the bell, as if touching infinite silence. The bronze gleamed, as though her inner light was spilling into the world. He understood then there are those who need not see the light, because they are the light. The blind girl's story is a reflection of Zen insight that true light does not lie in the eyes, but in the awakening of the heart. The Buddha once said, "When the mind is clear, the world becomes bright." We live in an age where eyes are wide open but hearts are closed. We see more than ever, and yet understand less. We look at others through surfaces, success, mistakes, reputation, but fail to see their quiet fears and hidden longing beneath. The blind girl had no eyes, yet she possessed the wisdom of pure perception, something many who see have lost. When life takes something away from us, it may be its way of teaching us to see with another eye, the eye of compassion. According to the Buddha's teaching, compassion is not pity. It is the ability to feel another's pain as one's own. The blind girl did not need sight to understand. She perceived the bell and the people around her through total presence in each moment. Because she was not distracted by appearances, she could hear something deeper, the bell within the human heart. Modern psychology calls this empathetic resonance. When one truly listens with the heart, their brain waves can synchronize with another's. In other words, when we are fully present with compassion, we don't just hear others, we heal them through the quiet energy of peace. Sometimes in life you may feel unseen, unheard. Perhaps you're living in a world where everyone speaks but few truly listen. Yet here is the mystery. When you begin to listen to others, with your heart you too begin to be heard. Try something small tonight. Before sleep, instead of thinking about tomorrow, just listen. Listen to your breath. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to the quiet around you. Don't try to understand. Don't try to stop thinking. Just listen. When you listen deeply, your heart softens, your breath deepens, and sleep comes naturally, like a flower closing its petals. Compassion begins there in the moment. You listen to life through your own silence. The blind girl's lesson is to see with the heart, not with the eyes. Eyes can see form, but only the heart can see truth. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught one who listens with a pure heart will see what even the blind can see. When you see with the heart, everything changes. You begin to recognize that others' suffering is not a burden, but an invitation to compassion. You begin to see that those who have hurt you are not merely the cause of pain, but beings who are themselves in pain. True compassion is not only giving, it is understanding. To understand is to stop being angry. To understand is to stop judging. To understand is to forgive. Science has shown that when we practice compassion, the brain activates the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for positive emotions, while calming the amygdala, the center of fear and stress. In other words, compassion is not only a spiritual act, it is medicine for the nervous system. It soothes fear, slows the heartbeat, lowers blood pressure, and helps you sleep deeply. Because only when the heart is open can the mind truly rest. The next morning, as the first light of dawn appeared, Genshu left the temple. Before departing, he stood for a long time beside the great bronze bell, where the blind girl had once struck her gentle notes. He placed his hand upon its surface, cool yet tender, heavy yet light. He did not strike it, but inside him the bell still rang a soundless tone, the quiet vibration of gratitude and peace. He knew he had to continue his journey, for every place he passed through opened another door within his heart. Dusk arrived. The last rays of the day fell over the mountain slopes, dissolving into the pale gold of evening. Genshu followed a dirt road where the crescent moon began to rise. At the foot of the hill lay a small village where people were preparing for the festival of lights. Children laughed as they carried lotus-shaped paper lanterns, lighting small candles inside, before gently setting them afloat upon the river. Genshu stopped by the water's edge, watching the lights drift away. His heart grew warm as the entire scene glowed with a soft, delicate light, as though each lantern was a tiny soul being carried by wind and water into peace. Amid the joy of the festival, sudden sobbing broke out. A young boy stood by the water, his hands empty. His lantern had slipped from his grasp. The flame extinguished the paper, swallowed by the dark current. He ran after it, crying out between tears, "Give it back, please." "My lantern." The laughter faded. People turned to look. Genshu approached the child and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. The boy turned toward him, eyes red. "I lost it, sir," he said, voice trembling. "I made it myself. I wanted it to shine the longest, but it fell away." Genshu looked down at the river where the boy's lantern had disappeared among hundreds of other glowing lights. He asked softly, "What did you see when it drifted away?" The boy shook his head, tears falling. "I just saw it. Gone." Genshu was silent for a moment, then said, "But if you look a little closer, you'll see its light didn't go out. It just joined the others. You may not recognize which one is yours now, but do you notice how the river shines a little brighter where it passed?" The boy looked carefully, and indeed, the spot where his lantern had floated seemed slightly more luminous. Genshu smiled gently. Nothing truly disappears. It only changes place. When the festival ended, the villagers went home, leaving the river quiet again. Genshu sat beside the boy under the moonlight. The moon's reflection rippled faintly on the surface of the water. The boy asked, "If everything fades away someday, how can I not feel sad?" Genshu gazed at the moon and replied softly, "Do you see the moon reflected in the river?" "Yes." The boy nodded. "If you scoop up the water with your hands, can you hold the moon?" The boy shook his head. "No, sir. It would scatter." Genshu smiled kindly. "That's right, because the moon never truly lives in the water. Just like joy loved ones are precious things, they don't truly exist outside of you. They live in your heart. When you try to hold them, you disturb the water. When you keep still, the moon reflects by itself. The boy fell silent, then sighed. I'm just afraid. If I don't hold on, I'll forget. Genshu looked at him with warmth. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering in a different way. When you stop clinging, love becomes lighter. It no longer hurts. A soft breeze rippled across the water. The moon's reflection trembled but did not disappear. Genshu looked at the boy, feeling a deep tenderness. He remembered himself long ago, sitting by a river mourning something he had lost. The paper lantern was a symbol of everything we love in life: a person, a dream, a relationship, a piece of our identity. We pour effort and hope into it, and when it drifts away, we feel as if a part of ourselves has gone with it. But the Buddha taught all conditioned things are impermanent. Everything that arises will also pass away. What we call loss is only transformation. Light does not die, it merely changes form. In psychology, this is called the transformation of attachment, the gentle shift from clinging to understanding. When we realize that loss is a natural part of life, we no longer resist it. Instead, we learn to transform sorrow into compassion. Like the boy in the story, we all have our own paper lanterns, the things that once glowed brightly in our lives. But the river of time always moves. If we keep standing on the shore longing for what's gone, we'll miss the lanterns still shining for us right now. When we let go, we do not lose love, we allow it to flow. Like water, it finds its own path, becoming deeper, softer, and warmer. Tonight, if you hold something you cannot release, a relationship, a memory, or an old dream, let this story become a quiet ritual for your heart. Imagine yourself sitting beside a still river. Before you floats a paper lantern. Inside it burns a small flame, the symbol of what you're holding on to. Now take a deep breath. And as you exhale gently, let it drift onto the water. Watch it float away. You are not abandoning it. You are returning it to where it belongs. As the light drifts farther, you will realize you have lost nothing. Because in letting go, a new space opens, a place where your heart can breathe, where your spirit can rest. A study by the Institute of Psychotherapy in Tokyo found that people who practiced imagining the act of letting go before sleep for just 5 minutes experienced steadier heart rates, more balanced alpha brain waves, and fell into deep sleep more easily. When the mind releases, the body releases too. When resistance stops, rest becomes the most natural healing. So the next time you can't sleep, don't force yourself to be calm. Just imagine releasing a lantern. Every thought, every worry, every memory, each is a tiny candle. And you. Simply let them drift away. The boy's lesson is our lesson. Letting go doesn't make you lose, it shows you what truly remains. When you stop clinging to the past, you open the door for the present to enter. When you accept loss, you begin to live more fully. Letting go is not indifference. It is a deeper form of love. Because only when the heart no longer grips tightly can love become truly free. The Buddha once said, "There is nothing we can hold that will not cause suffering." When we let go, we have everything. Loss is the great test of compassion for ourselves and for the world. Only when we have known the pain of losing can we truly love those who are still losing. If you look with your heart, you will see that nothing ever truly disappears. The boy's lantern still shines upon the river, just as people continue to love after parting, to live after tears, to trust again after breaking. That is the miracle of impermanence. The next morning, Genshu left the village. Behind him, the river shimmered. New lanterns still floated their gentle light merging with the water. He felt the white thread in his hand grow softer, as light as breath. On the path across the meadow, he saw a farmer trying desperately to save his rice field from an approaching storm. The sky had turned dark, a heavy blanket covering the valley. Wind began to whip through the bamboo, and clouds rushed in from the sea so fast it seemed the heavens were collapsing. As Genshu walked away from the village where the boy had learned about letting go, he heard a shout echoing from the fields. Turning, he saw a farmer running frantically through the rice, pulling tarps and clutching armfuls of harvested stalks. Rain began to pour, heavy and relentless. Genshu approached his robe soaked through. The farmer kept working, muttering as if pleading with the sky. "Oh heavens, not now. I've worked all season, please don't take it all away." When thunder roared, the farmer looked up furious. Why does it rain when I need sun? Why does disaster come when I've done everything right? Genshu stood quietly. He saw that with every frantic motion, the man was not only fighting the storm in the sky, but also the one inside his heart. When the rain finally eased, Genshu walked closer. The farmer sat slumped among flooded stalks, eyes red from exhaustion and grief. Genshu said softly, "You've done all you can. Why blame the rain?" The farmer lifted his head, voice trembling. "Because I don't understand. I live honestly. I harm no one. Yet every year I lose my crops. The greedy grow rich, and the deceitful prosper. Tell me, master, what am I supposed to believe in now?" Genshu was silent for a long time, then asked, "When you plant rice, and it doesn't sprout the next day, do you get angry?" "No," said the farmer, "because I know it takes time." Then Genshu replied, "If you sow good seeds and the harvest hasn't come yet, why grow angry?" The farmer lowered his gaze. The air smelled of wet soil and decay. In that quiet moment, Genshu said gently, "This storm didn't come to destroy you. It came to teach you how to stand firm." The next morning, the sun rose. Water was slowly receding from the fields, but many stalks lay bent and broken. The dark golden rice lay scattered the stalks, muddy the smell of damp earth, mingling with wild grass, the scent of morning after a storm. The farmer sat among his ruined crops, hands sunk into the mud as if trying to hold on to what was gone. His face, browned by the sun, was marked by fatigue and quiet despair. When Genshu passed by his robe, dark with rain stains, straw sandals caked in mud, he paused by the edge of the field and asked softly, "What will you do with the broken stalks?" The farmer's voice was hoarse. "I'll pull them all up. They're ruined. There's no saving them." Genshu stepped into the water knee-deep in mud. He picked up a broken stalk, wiped the dirt from its roots, and said slowly, like giving a silent teaching, "Look closely. The root is still alive. If you cut it down just because it broke, you'll never see the life that remains inside." The farmer looked closer. Indeed, from the dark bent stem, a pale green shoot was beginning to sprout, fragile yet determined. Life quietly rising from what seemed beyond repair. Genshu touched the mud, gently feeling its warmth. The storm doesn't only knock things down, it also loosens the roots. And when roots reach deeper into the soil, the seed of understanding begins to grow. The farmer sat in silence, gazing across the field. The fallen stalks no longer looked like symbols of loss, but signs of renewal. He asked quietly, almost to himself, "Then, does that mean all suffering is karma?" Master Genshu looked toward the rising sun, golden light reflecting off the water. "Not always," he said. "Some pain is old karma, yes, but much of it comes from the way we see. Rain itself has no intention to harm, but the one who craves sunlight calls it disaster, while the one who sows in season sees it as a blessing." The farmer bowed his head, scooping up a handful of soil, feeling its softness between his fingers. He realized the very mud he once despised was what nourished the rice, and the pain he had resisted was what would help him grow. He looked up and asked softly, "But if pain is part of life, how can we not fear it?" Genshu watched the wind move through the bent stalks. "People only fear what they don't understand," he said. "When you see clearly that storms are part of the season, you stop resenting them. Even the rice that falls will rise again when the sun returns. The universe was not made to harm, only to teach every being humility." Then with a calm voice he added, "Suffering is the same. It breaks us, but through the cracks light enters." The farmer sat still, his heart slowly softening, like a sprout breaking through the soil. Anger and regret faded, replaced by quiet acceptance. He saw that the storm had not only taken it, had also given wisdom, gratitude, and the will to rise again. Wind brushed across the remaining stalks, making them shimmer in the sunlight, like thousands of tiny mirrors catching the light of rebirth. Genshu said, "Do you see they are not dead? They're just learning to stand again in a new way." The farmer looked where Genshu pointed, a strange feeling rising within him, light clear and deep. He stood, waded into the field, and began lifting the fallen rice. His hands trembled, but each movement was like a prayer. Genshu quietly walked away. His figure dissolved into the morning light steps, slow and serene. When he disappeared behind the bamboo grove, the farmer could hear the wind whispering across the field, like the faint chanting of a sutra. And for the first time since the storm, he felt peace, not because his crops were saved, but because his heart had stopped resisting what is. For sometimes, the only thing we need to do is sit quietly among the ruins and let the heart learn how to sprout again. The farmer's story is a profound teaching on karma and causality, the two natural laws the Buddha revealed more than 2,500 years ago. In life, many think karma is punishment, something mysterious that causes suffering. But karma is not punishment, it is reflection. It simply shows us the results of what we've planted in body, speech, and mind. When we understand karma as a natural law, there is no one to blame. We stop resenting heaven, blaming others, or torturing ourselves. We simply look at the seeds we are planting through our thoughts, words, and actions each day. Causality-dependent origination is the thread that connects everything. A rainstorm does not come only from clouds. It also depends on vapor, wind, temperature, and time. Likewise, what happens to us arises from countless conditions, not only our past deeds, but also the actions, intentions, and circumstances of others. When the human mind cannot see the whole, it freezes a single moment and declares, "I suffer because of bad karma." But from the view of Zen, karma is only a lesson we haven't yet finished learning. Every pain is a class we are invited to retake with more awareness this time. In psychology, this mirrors the idea of pattern repetition, the subconscious tendency to repeat experiences until we change how we respond. When we understand karma, we stop asking, "Why did this happen?" and start asking, "What am I meant to learn here?" If you are going through a storm in your life, a loss, illness, heartbreak, or failure, remember, no storm lasts forever, and none comes without purpose. Before sleep, sit quietly for a few minutes. Close your eyes and picture the storm within you. The worries, anger, regrets. Don't try to chase them away. Just watch them as Genshu did in the rain. Then take a slow, deep breath and exhale gently. As you breathe out, imagine the rain falling, carrying away the weight you've been holding. The storm outside will fade when the storm inside is seen. Modern research confirms this. When people practice mindful acceptance before sleep, heart rate and blood pressure drop, the brain's stress center. The amygdala quiets down and the body naturally enters deep rest. In other words, acceptance itself is healing. The Buddha taught karma is not bondage. It is an opportunity for understanding and transformation. So when a storm comes, ask yourself, what is this here to teach me? Maybe it came to teach humility. Maybe it came to loosen your grip on control. Or maybe it came to remind you that everything in the universe moves together, and none of us is the center of it. Karma is not an enemy, but a strict and loving teacher. Causality is not destiny, but the river where all choices meet. When you see this clearly, fear of loss begins to fade. What comes, let it come like rain. What goes, let it go like a dissolving cloud. Before sleep tonight, sit quietly. Relax your body. Gently recall something that caused you pain today. Not to judge it, but to see it as a cloud passing by. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Breathe deeply. Release your shoulders and let every cell in your body rest. When you start to see life through the lens of karma and causality, you realize no one is truly to blame, and nothing ever happens by accident. Every hardship, every loss is just another small stone on the path, leading you back to understanding and to peace within. After the storm, the sky cleared. The ground was damp. The rice fields carried a soft, earthy fragrance. The farmer bowed deeply to Genshu, gratitude shining in his eyes where anger had once been. Genshu continued his journey. By late afternoon, the last sunlight filtered through a grove of bamboo, glinting off the white thread in his hand. He had walked through many villages, witnessing people struggle with karma loss, fear, and detachment. After the storm in the farmer's field, the winds had calmed. Yet another question began to stir in his heart, a question every human being must have asked at least once in their life. If there are no chains, why do we still feel unfree? Along the dirt path, the songs of birds echoed through the golden light, each note falling like water into his quiet heart. Genshu stopped in front of a small hut. By the porch stood a bamboo cage. Its door was wide open, yet inside a small bird remained motionless, refusing to fly. An old man with silver hair sat nearby, weaving baskets under the eaves. Genshu asked gently, "The door is open. Why does the bird stay inside?" The old man smiled, eyes calm and deep. "It's been in the cage too long. Now that it's free, it fears the sky." Genshu stood still. The bird was tiny, its eyes bright, but filled with invisible fear. It took a few steps toward the open door, hesitated, then retreated. It was as if an invisible thread bound its wings, fragile yet unbreakable. Genshu looked for a long time, feeling something stir inside him, a reflection of humankind itself, standing before freedom, yet afraid to take a step. He turned to the old man. "How long have you had it?" The old man's voice was raspy but warm. "More than 3 years. I found it when it fell from its nest, its wings shattered. I cared for it day by day until it healed. When it could fly, I opened the cage. But it didn't leave. When I placed it outside, it trembled, then crawled back in. That's when I understood the real cage isn't here. It's inside its mind." Genshu watched the little bird huddled in the bamboo shadows. Sunlight poured over it like liquid gold, lighting up its trembling feathers. He asked softly, "Then why do you still keep it?" The old man smiled faintly, his eyes kind but wistful. "Perhaps because I'm like it. I've never left this village in my whole life. I fear that if I go, I won't find my way back." His words fell like a drop of dew into Genshu's stillness. He realized not only the bird, but most people live behind walls they built themselves. Walls of habit, fear, memory, and the quiet voice that keeps whispering, "You can't." He sat down beside the old man. The bamboo rustled softly. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth and twilight. Neither spoke. They simply watched the bird now, gazing toward the open air, its eyes caught between two worlds. After a while, Genshu said, voice as light as smoke, "Some doors have been open for a long time, yet those inside still haven't dared to step out." The old man nodded, shoulders trembling, because they believe the outside is more frightening than the inside. Genshu smiled faintly. He walked toward the weathered cage. The door was still open. He placed his hand on the frame, feeling the warmth of sunlight, and said quietly, as though speaking to himself, but also to the little bird, "The sky has never imprisoned anyone. Only the fear within the heart locks the wings." Then he reached into his robe and pulled out the white thread, the one his master had given him, before passing away, a symbol of the bond between stillness and all things. He laid the thread beside the bamboo cage under the golden light of dusk. The sunlight glimmered upon it like a thin crescent moon stretched across the sky. The bird tilted its head toward the thread. For a brief moment, it hesitated, then suddenly its wings fluttered. A faint sound of feathers filled the quiet air. It flew over the roof, through the bamboo grove, toward the vast red horizon. The old man stood motionless, eyes shimmering. He whispered, "So freedom isn't about breaking the cage. It's realizing you were never imprisoned." Genshu bowed his head. The white thread swayed in the breeze, gleaming as if smiling in the afternoon sun. In that moment, he felt a deep kinship between himself, the bird, and the old man, all beings who had once feared to step beyond their own boundaries. From beyond the forest, a temple bell echoed faintly. Genshu closed his eyes. He understood now. Freedom is not a place to reach, but a state of mind that no longer fears. He turned and walked toward the foot of the mountain. His steps were light, almost weightless, for in his heart the white thread was flying, soaring with the freed bird into the boundless sky of stillness. And perhaps in that very moment Genshu was no longer seeking freedom. He was freedom. Freedom is something everyone speaks of, yet few truly understand. Most people spend their lives searching for it outside in wealth, work, love, or recognition. They believe that once they escape certain bonds, they'll be at peace. But when they finally achieve what they desire, a new fear quietly takes its place. External freedom cannot last if the heart inside remains afraid. Like the bird, the cage is only a symbol. What truly binds us are habits, memories, and the fear of being hurt. The Buddha once taught, "No one binds you but your own mind, and no one can free you but your own awareness." Zen does not mean rejecting the world. It means recognizing the mind's own chains. One can live in a noisy city and still be free, because freedom is the absence of attachment, not of noise. Another may dwell in silence, yet remain imprisoned because fear, regret, and desire still fill their heart. True freedom begins when we stop reacting automatically to life, when we realize that every sound, every word, every event is not an enemy, but a mirror of our own mind. In modern psychology, this is known as cognitive liberation, the realization that emotions are not absolute truths. When we see this, we create space between feeling and reaction. That space is the beginning of freedom. Have you ever felt trapped in your own life? Not in a prison, but in cycles of thought, fears, regrets, or endless self-blame. Before sleep tonight, you can try a simple meditation. Imagine a small cage within your chest. Inside it, a bird your mind. It flutters longing for peace, but the bars are made of past pain, anxiety, and the fear of not being loved. Now imagine gently opening the cage door. No force, no push, just an invitation through breath and a soft smile. As you exhale, whisper, "I allow myself to be free." Breathe in, feel cool air spreading through your body. Breathe out, release the urge to control. With each breath, the inner walls soften and dissolve like morning mist. Neuroscientists have found that when people relax and surrender before sleep, the brain's fear center, the amygdala, quiets, and the parasympathetic nervous system activates, guiding the body into deep restorative rest. In other words, psychological freedom is the foundation of peaceful sleep. The Buddha's teachings on non-self and liberation do not urge us to abandon the world, but to stop being bound by it. We don't need to leave our jobs, families, or responsibilities, only the illusion that they define who we are. Freedom does not mean doing whatever we please. It means no longer being ruled by our emotions. It means standing amid life's waves while the heart remains still like a lake. Try this in daily life. When someone says something hurtful, pause. Take one breath before reacting. Feel your heart and remember, I have the right not to carry those words inside me. Or when you feel tired by things beyond your control, remember, a door can be open, but you must choose to walk through. Each night before you sleep, try this simple practice. Inhale deeply. Exhale slowly. Feel your body relax. Visualize the bird within you taking flight, rising into an open sky, free from all barriers and fear. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I am free." Gradually, you'll begin to feel the sky within open wide. Invisible walls will start to fade. The bamboo frame will dissolve, and the echoes of the past will quiet down. All that remains is an open sky of stillness where everything can come and go naturally, gently, without the need to hold on to anything. As the bird flew away, the white thread in Genshu's hand trembled in the wind. He knew that part of his journey had become clear. Freedom does not come from breaking things apart, but from seeing clearly the true nature of what binds us. As night fell, He kept walking until he saw the faint glow of fire from a distant palace. The villagers told him it was the residence of a king who suffered deeply despite having everything. The king had invited many sages, all to answer one question: why do I have everything, and yet still feel empty? On the stone path leading into the capital, Genshu saw golden carriages rushing past, the sound of hooves echoing through the air, mixed with the scent of incense and coal smoke. In that place, life seemed wrapped in luxury and power. Yet it was there that Genshu could hear most clearly the sighs of restless hearts. At the central square, a beggar sat by the city gate. His sunken eyes and thin face carried not misery, but a quiet, unshakable calm. Not far away in the grand palace, the ruler of this land, called the wise king, by his people lay awake night after night. Though surrounded by gold servants, authority, and praise, he still felt an emptiness within him, as though a dark hollow inside had never been illuminated. One sleepless night, the king stepped out into the corridor. The moonlight fell across his weary face. He whispered, "Why do I have everything and yet feel something missing? Why do they say happiness lies within, but I have never found it?" A simple question, but it is often the beginning of awakening. After the palace ceremony, Genshu was invited to remain in the royal court to meet the king who had long heard of him. The hall was vast. Light filtered through silk curtains glimmering in the tired eyes of the monarch. The king looked at Genshu and spoke in a low, heavy voice. "Zen master, they say you can show the path to peace within oneself. But look at me, I have a kingdom, countless servants, power over life and death. Yet at night I cannot sleep. Sometimes I envy the beggars outside my gate. At least they can rest." Genshu was silent for a while, then asked gently, "Your Majesty, would you truly trade places with them?" The king hesitated, then shook his head. "I cannot. I was born in this palace." Genshu smiled kindly. "That is precisely why you are not free. You live in a golden cage. The beggar lives in one made of dust. The material is different, but both are cages." The king said nothing, but for the first time someone had spoken aloud what he had long felt, but never dared to admit. The next day, Genshu asked to leave the palace. The king, curious and uneasy, disguised himself as a commoner and secretly followed the monk. They passed through the bustling marketplace, the laughter of children mingling with merchants' cries. Near the city gate, they saw the same beggar again, this time sharing half a piece of dry bread with a skinny stray dog. His eyes shone with quiet peace, neither bitter nor broken, only a soft, natural smile like the wind. The king approached and asked, "You have no home, no possessions, no one to care for you. How can you still smile like that?" The beggar looked up and answered softly, "And you, my lord, you have all those things. Why can't you?" The question struck straight into the deepest part of the king's heart. He froze, speechless. Genshu stepped closer and said quietly, "Each person carries a prison within. Some build it from fear, others from pride. No matter what the walls are made of, if they do not see them, they remain imprisoned." Tears filled the king's eyes. He whispered, his voice trembling, "I thought I ruled the world, but I have never ruled my own mind." Genshu reached into his robe and placed a white thread in the king's palm. "This was given to me by my master. It is as fragile as breath, yet it symbolizes the connection between stillness and all things. held with mindfulness, it becomes the path to liberation. The king closed his hand around the thread. Amid the noise of the market, he heard a faint sound inside like a bell ringing in the distance. For the first time, he understood freedom does not come from the throne, but from the moment the heart lets go. The story of the king and the beggar is not about wealth and poverty. It is a mirror of two states of mind, one bound by ego, the other freed from it. The ego is the shell humans build to feel safe. Names, titles, memories, possessions, the belief that I am the center of the world. Yet it is that very I that becomes the root of suffering. The Buddha taught, when you say I, you divide the world into two, self and the rest, and in that division, suffering arises. As long as we cling to the ego, we cannot see things as they truly are. Everything becomes filtered through the lens of mine, my job, my love, my pain, my loss. And even when the outer world is peaceful, the inner one remains restless. In Zen, liberation begins when we can observe the ego without obeying it. It is the moment we realize I am feeling anger instead of I am anger. I am feeling sadness instead of I am sadness. When we see this, the ego starts to dissolve, and within that space, freedom appears. Modern psychology calls this self-transcendence, the ability to rise above the self. Studies show that when people reach this level of awareness, brain activity in the region linked to self-focus decreases, while compassion and connection increase. This is why deep meditation brings happiness even when circumstances stay the same. Before sleep, our minds often spin with questions. Did I do well enough? What do they think of me? What must I do tomorrow to not disappoint anyone? All of these come from the same root, the self that wants to be validated. But the more we try to hold on to an image of who we are, the further we drift from peace. Like the king, you may exhaust yourself chasing perfection until you no longer know who you truly are. So tonight, try something small. Take a deep breath in. Exhale slowly, and silently say to yourself, I release the roles of today. You are no longer the parent, the worker, the leader, or the caretaker. In this moment, you are simply a living being breathing. Nothing more, nothing less. Feel your body grow lighter. Let your mind settle. As the ego fades, sleep will come naturally, like the wind brushing against leaves. Science has confirmed that when people loosen identification with the self, their heart rate and cortisol stress hormone decrease. They sleep deeper, dream more peacefully, because there is no longer anyone left to fight inside. The Buddha taught, there is no fixed self, only a stream of changing consciousness. When we understand this, we no longer cling to gain or loss, praise or blame, because there is no longer a someone who must win or lose. Everything simply flows as part of dependent origination, an endless movement belonging to all and none. Each day you can begin with a few moments of awareness. When you see someone succeed, resist envy. Smile quietly and think, their karma is blooming. Their joy takes nothing from you. It reminds you that the universe unfolds in perfect timing. When hardship comes, pause and ask, what is this moment teaching me? Every challenge carries a hidden lesson, like a seed that needs darkness to sprout. Before you sleep, place your hand over your heart and whisper thanks. Whether today brought joy or sorrow, it was all a mirror showing your own mind, helping you understand yourself more deeply. That is the first step toward non-self, not losing who you are, but realizing you were never separate from the whole. When you see this, your heart becomes light as the wind. When leaving the palace, Genshu turned to look at the king one last time. He no longer saw a man wrapped in royal robes, but a human being smiling in simplicity, the first true smile since the king had ascended the throne. As night fell and silence settled over the land, Genshu followed a narrow path leading through a small village beside a stream. The moon hung low, its reflection shimmering on the water like a mirror. The world was so still that even the sound of one's own footsteps felt like tearing through a dream. He passed a humble, thatched house where a faint candlelight flickered through the cracks of the wooden door. From inside came hesitant footsteps, someone entering quietly. A thief. The man held a candle in his trembling hand. The flame wavered, casting shadows over his tense face. Genshu stood still, observing. In that brief moment, he felt something deeply human: fear, hunger, and a hint of despair. He wondered, if he were not starving, would he have lost his goodness? If he were not cornered, would he dare step into wrongdoing? The thief searched the small room, finding only a few simple belongings: a torn robe, some dry tea leaves, and a white thread laid neatly on the table. The room was bare, almost painfully so. The candlelight revealed only a few old sutras, a cold teapot, and the sound of wind slipping through thin walls. There was nothing worth stealing, yet the silence itself made him uneasy, as though unseen eyes were watching. Just then, the door opened softly. A man in a brown robe entered. His face was calm, his eyes gentle yet bright, and the candle in the thief's hand began to tremble. I didn't know someone lived here," the thief stammered. The man did not scold him. He only asked quietly, "What are you looking for?" The thief lowered his head, his voice barely audible. "I just wanted something to eat. I'm so hungry." The man glanced around the room, then walked to the corner and picked up his only coat. Placing it in the thief's hands, he said softly, "I have nothing else but this. Take it. It will keep you warm." The thief froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with such kindness that he suddenly felt exposed and small. You're not afraid of me," he whispered. The man smiled gently. "If I were afraid, I would have locked the door. But my door is always open. I have nothing to lose." The words caught in the thief's throat. He sat down slowly, eyes glistening as he looked at the small flame before him. The candle was fragile, yet it lit up the whole dark room. "I'm not worthy," he murmured. "I've been stealing my whole life, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know any other way to survive." Genshu sat beside him, his voice deep and warm, like the earth. When you know you've done wrong, you're no longer truly a thief. The ones truly lost are those who still believe they are walking the right path. The thief lowered his head, tears falling onto the cold floor. Genshu continued softly, "Forgiveness isn't about freeing others. It's about releasing the burden in your own heart. And tonight you've already begun." The thief looked at him, then at the flickering candle. The gentle light illuminated Genshu's serene face, calm and full, like the full moon in a quiet night. Finally, the thief nodded, voice trembling. "I won't steal anymore. I'll work instead." Genshu smiled and took the candle from his hand. He blew it out softly. "Keep it," he said. "When your heart grows dark-lighted again, not to see the road, but to remember that true light is not in the candle, but in the heart." The The thief held the candle close, bowed deeply, and left. The door closed, leaving only silence. Genshu looked outside. Moonlight shimmered across the stream, glimmering like the white thread on the table. He exhaled gently. Inside him, there was no one left to forgive, because finally, he understood no one had ever truly harmed him. There were only wandering hearts and light always waiting to be recognized. This story teaches a simple but profound truth. Forgiveness is not something you do outwardly. It is a return inward. When we are angry at someone, our mind becomes a closed room. The longer we hold that anger, the more suffocating it becomes. Forgiveness is opening the window, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve to breathe. The thief in the story didn't need condemnation. He had already been punished by his own conscience. His remorse was the first ray of light, entering a long darkened heart. And Genshu didn't need to preach. He simply refused to react from ego. In Zen, this is the art of non-resistance. When we stop resisting others, we stop feeding the fire of anger within ourselves. And when there is nothing left to resist, only compassion remains. The Buddha once said, "Hatred is never appeased by hatred. It is only by love that hatred ceases. This is the eternal law." Modern psychology now confirms this ancient truth. When people cultivate forgiveness, activity in the brain's stress center, the amygdala, decreases, while the region linked to peace and empathy, the prefrontal cortex, becomes more active. Biologically, forgiveness is a form of neural healing. When you hold on to anger, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol, raising your heart rate, disturbing your sleep and draining your energy. But when you let go, your heartbeat steadies, your breathing softens, and deep sleep returns. Forgiveness, therefore, is not a gift you give to others. It is a gift you give to yourself. If someone has hurt you, remember, forgiveness doesn't mean accepting what they did. It means stopping the cycle of suffering inside you. Before sleep, you can try a simple practice. Sit quietly, close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths. Imagine a candle burning in your hands. That light represents compassion, an endless flame untouched by the winds of life. Now recall the person who hurt you, not to reopen wounds, but to see how long you've been carrying them. Breathe in, acknowledge the anger still there. Breathe out, whisper, "I choose to let go." Repeat until your heart begins to soften. You don't need to force forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a decision of the mind, it's a process of the heart. Like Genshu, you teach not through reaction, but through stillness. When your heart is quiet enough, forgiveness blooms naturally, like flowers opening when spring arrives. A study from Stanford University found that after just 8 weeks of compassion and forgiveness practice, over 60% of participants experienced better sleep and a significant drop in chronic stress. Forgiveness doesn't only heal the mind, it heals the body. In Buddhist teaching, forgiveness arises from non-self. When there is no I to be offended, who is left to be angry or to seek revenge. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the highest expression of wisdom. The wise do not see wrongdoers as enemies. They see their suffering and understand that every harmful act is born from ignorance. Each day you can cultivate small moments of light within yourself. When someone hurts you, pause and ask, where is this person suffering that they must act this way? This question doesn't excuse them. It reminds you that pain is often the root of every mistake. Seeing another's pain softens your own heart. When old memories return, instead of saying, "I can't forget," whisper, "I'm learning to see differently." Forgetting doesn't mean erasing. It means viewing the past with gentler, awakened eyes. Before sleep, imagine holding Genshu's candle. Light it not to see others, but to illuminate your own heart. The small flame is enough to chase away the darkness within. That light helps you realize no one is truly evil, only lost in their own shadows. And when you can see them through the light of compassion and understanding, you have already stepped out of your own darkness. The next morning, Genshu left the small hut. The sky had cleared, sunlight gently streamed through, and the stream beside the path sparkled like thousands of tiny candles floating on the water. Dew still clung to the wet bamboo leaves. Genshu sat by the veranda of a small temple, quietly watching as the sun rose through the pine forest. Below him, a small stream flowed between moss-covered stones, making a soft murmuring sound, like the endless chant of nature itself. For many years, that sound had been Genshu's constant companion, pure, patient, and serene. He had walked through many seasons of loss, the temple that burned down friends who drifted away, things once believed eternal, that had dissolved with time. And that morning, as he watched the water curve around a large rock blocking its flow, a question arose in his heart. Why do people suffer when faced with obstacles? Is it because we want everything to follow our will, forgetting that life itself belongs to no one? Genshu sat there observing the stream, as though looking into his own mind. The water reached the rock and was stopped. For a moment, it swirled and foamed as if hesitating. But then, naturally, it found another path, slipping through a narrow gap beside the rock, flowing around it and continuing on. No anger, no resistance, just quiet adaptation, as effortless as breathing. By noon, sunlight spread gold across the treetops. A young woodcutter appeared, his shoulders thin, his back bent as though carrying invisible burdens. He put down his bundle of firewood and sat by the stream, his eyes distant and weary. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Master, I feel like life is mocking me. Whatever I try, obstacles appear. When I want to be filial, my father falls ill. When I want to marry, I lose my job. Every time I think peace is near, everything collapses again. Is it because my karma is too heavy that I suffer this much?" Genshu didn't answer immediately. He silently picked up a small pebble and dropped it into the stream. Ripples spread outward, then disappeared. He pointed at the flowing water and asked, "Do you see that stream?" "Yes, master," the young man replied. "It meets a large rock," Genshu continued softly, "but does it stop?" The woodcutter shook his head. "No, it goes around." "Exactly," Genshu said. "The water doesn't ask why the rock is there, nor does it resent whoever placed it. It simply continues on another way. Humans suffer not because of the rocks in their path, but because they demand the water flow according to their own design." The young man looked down at the stream, silent for a long time. Sweat trickled down his sunburned face. "But master," he said softly, "what if I'm too tired? What if I've walked every path and can't find another way?" Genshu picked up a dry leaf nearby and let it fall onto the surface of the water. The leaf spun, slowly floated for a moment, and drifted downstream. He said gently, Look at that leaf. It doesn't know the way, nor does it try to control the current. It simply floats and lets the water carry it. Likewise, when you can let go, when you stop resisting life, you'll see that the water has always been carrying you to exactly where you need to go. The woodcutter watched the leaf. Sunlight shimmered on its surface, turning it into a small piece of gold, drifting downstream. The wind rippled the water, sounding like the faint laughter of the forest. Something inside him loosened like a taut string finally released. "I understand now," he whispered, voice trembling, yet lighter. "I kept trying to be stronger than the rock when all I needed was to learn how to be soft like the water." Genshu smiled, his eyes warm as sunlight filtering through leaves. When you learn to flow instead of fight, even karma becomes the stream that leads you to the ocean. The woodcutter bowed deeply. Before them, the stream continued to flow, carrying the soft whispers of the mountains and trees. In that quiet moment, he realized peace does not always come from overcoming obstacles. Sometimes it comes from learning to move with them, like the stream that still sings even as it meets the rocks. The story seems simple, but within it lies a profound teaching about patience and letting life unfold naturally. Many people misunderstand patience as endurance, as silently swallowing pain. But in Buddhist teaching, patience is not suppression. It is understanding the nature of cause and condition. All things arise when causes and conditions meet and dissolve when those conditions end. Forcing things before their time only brings turmoil to the mind. Letting life unfold or does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means being flexible while maintaining inner calm, like water soft yet strong enough to carve through stone. A person who lives this way is not weak. They are strong precisely because they do not fight impermanence. Modern psychology says something similar. Those with cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt their thinking, tend to experience less anxiety, greater happiness, and deeper rest. When the brain stops resisting reality, stress-related regions quiet down, allowing the body to restore itself naturally. In Zen, this is called the state of non-resistance. When the mind stops fighting circumstances, its energy becomes whole again. Like water, whether it flows straight or around obstacles, it remains water, and only when we stop identifying ourselves with the path can we truly touch freedom. If you are feeling stuck in work relationships or with the unspoken worries that visit each night, pause for a moment. Look closely at the rock in your life. What is it? A person, a memory, or something you haven't been able to let go of? Then breathe in deeply. Exhale slowly. As you breathe, imagine yourself as the stream. Do not try to break the rock. Do not resent its presence. Let your breath find its own way around it. Each breath is a small movement of the stream, patient, gentle, yet ever moving forward. As you close your eyes to rest, listen to your heartbeat like the sound of the flowing water. Each beat whispers, "You are still moving, just more slowly now." Science has also shown that when you practice slow, mindful breathing, your brain releases serotonin, a natural calming chemical that eases the body into deep, restorative sleep. Like a stream circling a rock, your mind too needs time to flow gently, not by force, but by trust. The Buddha taught, "A peaceful mind is the greatest strength. Patience is the highest weapon. The patient person is not one without hardship. but one who remains still amid the storm. When the conditions are not yet ripe, they do not force. When the time arrives, they act wholeheartedly, but without clinging to results. You can begin tonight. Before sleep, whisper softly to your heart, "Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. I do not need to rush." Then imagine yourself sitting by a stream like Genshu. The sound of the water is your own consciousness, gently reminding you, you don't need to conquer, just flow. Patience is not waiting in misery. It is trusting the process. Letting life unfold is not giving up on goals. It is opening your heart to what is present now. When you understand this, every obstacle becomes not a wall, but a teacher guiding you to become softer, deeper, and more awake. Impermanence is the nature of life. Letting life unfold is the art of living peacefully within that impermanence, like water winding, but always finding its way to the sea. Afternoon on the mountainside, the sun poured its golden light over the bamboo forest, casting a gentle glow like the earth itself was singing a lullaby. After a long journey, Genshu stopped at a small thatched house, where thin blue smoke rose from a clay stove. A kettle was boiling, and in the distance, the murmur of a stream carried the same timeless rhythm that nature had sung for thousands of years. In the yard, an old woman with silver hair sat weaving a pillow out of dry rattan fibers. Her hands moved slowly, steadily, as if time had no authority here. No hurry, no sighs, only the quiet rhythm of her fingers and her calm gaze following each strand she wove. Genshu sat down by the veranda, silently observing. After a while, he asked softly, "Grandmother, why don't you rest? Aren't you tired weaving all day?" She smiled. "I'm not weaving to finish the pillow. I'm only weaving one strand at a time. When I'm tired, I rest. When I have energy, I weave again. The pillow will be done eventually. What matters is that I am present in every motion of my hands." Her answer left Genshu thoughtful. He realized that perhaps people spend their lives chasing what's next and forget to breathe. He looked at her, then back at himself, a man who had sought peace in temples and forests, yet forgotten that peace already lives within the smallest gestures of daily life. The next morning, Genshu rose early. The first light of dawn peeked over the mountains, and mist still blanketed the thatched roof. He saw the old woman sitting by the door, her frail hands patiently weaving the unfinished rattan pillow. Each dry strand was as thin as hair, yet she carefully threaded them together, her face serene as though she was conversing quietly with her own soul. A breeze passed over the house, carrying the scent of dry rattan and damp earth after the night dew. Genshu sat beside her, watching her slow, deliberate movements, and asked, "Aren't you afraid the pillow will break? These dry fibers seem fragile." She paused and smiled kindly. "Yes, it may break, but if I'm afraid it will, I'd never begin. When a strand snaps, I just tie it again. Life is like that too. When something breaks, we mend it. There's no need to rush." Then she continued weaving. Her movements were light as air, neither striving to finish nor fearing to fail. Each turn of her hands was like a gentle, mindful breath. Genshu watched, and his heart grew still. It felt as though every strand she wove was a silent prayer. At noon, Genshu sat under a tree near the temple porch. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, scattering bright spots across the ground. He closed his eyes, and listened to the wind whispering through the roof, the stream touching stones, the insects singing in the grass. Sounds that once seemed separate now blended into one quiet harmony. In that moment, he realized the present moment does not exist. Within time, it begins wherever the mind is truly here. When evening came, golden light filled the small house. The old woman placed the pillow on a wooden chair and poured tea for him. Her hands trembled slightly, but remained steady, the veins visible beneath the sunset glow, like the marks of a lifetime of diligence without complaint. "I've been weaving this pillow for 3 years," she said calmly. "Some say I'm too slow. They don't understand. I don't weave to finish. Every time I sit down, I feel peaceful, and that is enough. Perhaps when I take my last breath, this pillow still won't be done. But I'll know I've lived each day fully." Ginshu bowed his head, filled with deep reverence. Inside, he felt a quiet bell ring. He suddenly understood mindfulness isn't found in scriptures or rituals, but in each breath, each sip of tea, each patient movement of an old woman weaving under the fading light. He looked at the rattan pillow, still unfinished, yet radiating a strange sense of peace. Like life itself, it doesn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. As long as we live each day with awareness, even unfinished strands become part of the meditation. The old woman's story is a living image of presence in the moment, a core teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." In modern life, most suffering doesn't come from what is happening, but from memory and anticipation. We replay the past with regret or imagine the future with fear. Yet if we pause, we'll see there is no suffering in this very moment. Pain only appears when the mind leaves the now. The old woman didn't weave to finish, she wove to be weaving. Just as one who meditates does not sit to attain enlightenment, but to be sitting. When actions are no longer driven by outcomes, the mind becomes free, and within that freedom, wisdom blooms. Modern science agrees. Studies show that when people practice mindful presence, the brain's fear center, the amygdala becomes less active, while the regions that regulate emotion, the prefrontal cortex, strengthen. This not only improves sleep and reduces stress, but also enhances focus and happiness. If you are tired from worry or chasing the future, think of the old woman. She doesn't cling to results or the past. Every movement of her hands is whole and peaceful. Tonight before bed, you can try a simple practice. Lie down, but don't rush to sleep. Notice your pillow, feel its softness, its warmth. Then inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Feel the air pass through your nose, your chest, your belly. If your mind wanders to work or worry, don't force it to stop. Simply notice, I'm thinking. Then gently return to the breath, just as the old woman returns to each strand of rattan. You don't need to chase sleep. When you rest in awareness, sleep will find you just as still water naturally reflects the sky. No effort, no control, just presence. Living in the present is not a theory. It is the art of mindful living in ordinary life. A mindful person doesn't need to escape the world, only to be truly present in it, washing dishes, making tea, walking, listening to the rain. When you are fully here, everything becomes clear. Like the old woman, each motion of her weaving is a step in meditation. She doesn't count time, compare herself to others, or demand results. And because of that, she never loses. If life feels too fast, slow down a little. Drink a glass of water, as if it were the first sip of your life. Feel the coolness touch your tongue, slide down your throat. In that instant, you are truly alive. And if worry arises, remember, anxiety lives in the future, but peace only exists in the present. A Harvard study found that humans spend about 47% of their waking hours lost in thought, not truly present in what they're doing, and those moments are the root of unhappiness. Even 10 minutes of full attention helps the mind regain balance. That is the beginning of meditation. As night falls, the old woman places her rattan pillow by the window. Moonlight filters through, illuminating the steady pattern of her weaving, like the rhythm of breath embracing the whole house. Genshu stands bows to her and feels a rare, profound peace. He knows he has just learned the most important lesson of his life, that there is nowhere to go for peace, has always been here in this very moment. That morning, Genshu left the small house of the old woman who wove rattan pillows. The valley was wrapped in white mist. A river curved through the land, and in the distance lay a small town nestled among green rice fields. He followed the damp dirt path as scattered birdsong echoed faintly. The air was so still that each step he took seemed to carry its own sound. When he neared the village gate, Genshu noticed something unusual. There were no bells ringing. Though it was morning when temples normally sound their bells to greet the day here, only the wind passed over old tiled roofs. People walked quietly, their faces calm but distant. He stopped by a roadside stall where a man was preparing tea and asked, "Doesn't this village have a temple?" The man looked up and replied softly, "It does. The old temple sits on the western hill, but its bell has been silent for 10 years, ever since the storm cracked the bell tower." Genshu fell silent. A thought rose in him. In a place without a bell, do people still remember awakening? The temple on the hill was just as described, ancient, overgrown with moss. The stone steps leading up to its gate were worn smooth by generations of pilgrims. As Genshu arrived, morning dew still clung to the bamboo leaves. The breeze brushed through the green roof tiles with the sound of time breathing. In the courtyard, an old monk was sweeping leaves. His frame was thin, his back bent, but every stroke of his broom was gentle, as if he were touching the earth with devotion. Genshu bowed and said quietly, "I heard the temple bell here has been silent for a long time." The monk paused, lifted his gaze toward the cracked bell tower, and replied in a hoarse voice that seemed to carry the wind through stone. "The bell broke. No one has the strength to repair it. And even if we did, would anyone still know how to listen?" Genshu said nothing. He understood that the question was not about the bell. It was about humanity. In this noisy age, how many still hear the sound of silence? That night, Genshu stayed at the temple. A crescent moon hung above the dark violet sky. The wind whispered through the bamboo forest like the murmur of something ancient. The entire hillside sank into stillness so deep he could hear his own breath. In his restless sleep, he dreamt he stood in the temple courtyard, holding a wooden mallet to strike the bell. Yet when he swung, no sound came out, only silence spread vast and round as if the whole universe were resonating in an invisible tone. At dawn, mist veiled the bell tower. Genshu climbed the stone steps and touched the old bell. Its surface was cracked and spotted with rust, but it still stood firm, a witness to countless seasons. He pressed his palm against the cold fracture, and in that instant felt the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Then he realized the bell had never truly stopped. It was people who had forgotten how to listen with their hearts. As he descended the hill, he saw a young boy tending cattle near the bamboo grove. Genshu asked, "Have you ever heard the bell from this temple?" The boy shook his head, eyes bright as morning water. "No, sir. But every morning when the wind moves through the bamboo, I hear something like someone ringing a bell in the sky." Genshu smiled. He understood the bell still rings, not in metal, but in the wind and in the hearts that still know how to listen. When he left, the sun had risen. Light streamed through the bamboo, glinting off the crack in the old bell. The fracture shimmered like a line of gold. Genshu bowed his head and whispered, "No sound ever truly disappears in this world. Every silence carries within it a bell waiting to be heard through the stillness of one's own heart." The story of the town without a bell is more than a tale, it is a metaphor for the human mind. The bell represents awareness, the call to return home to oneself. When people stop listening, even the loudest bell becomes meaningless. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, though one may live 100 years without practice, it is as if he were dead, for his mind remains clouded. In daily life, the bell can take many forms: a loss, a failure, a pain, or simply the act of breathing. Every experience can be a call to awakening, if only we stop and listen. But most of us live like the villagers, busy, restless, and loud inside. When we lose the ability to hear silence, we lose touch with truth. The bell of life is still ringing, but we no longer hear it. In Zen, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the state of a mind that no longer resists. When the mind is calm, every sound becomes a teaching, a leaf falling, a breath, a heartbeat, like Genshu. When he touched the crack in the bell, he discovered that silence has its own sound, one that cannot be heard, with the ears only felt with the heart. Many people cannot sleep, not because they lack time, but because the mind will not stop speaking. The mind becomes a broken bell echoing endlessly with the past and the future. If you find yourself awake at night, anxious and restless, try returning to silence. Don't try to rest or force sleep. Just sit or lie still and listen to the hum of a fan, to your breathing, to your heartbeat. Treat these sounds as if they were the ancient bell ringing within you. When you truly listen, something miraculous happens. Those sounds no longer disturb you. They become a gentle music, leading you into stillness. Recent neuroscience confirms this truth. In moments of deep silence, the brain enters a restorative state. The amygdala, the fear center, relaxes, the heart rate slows, and alpha brain waves increase, the same pattern seen in meditative sleep. Sometimes the truest bell is the one that doesn't ring. When there is no outer sound, you begin to hear the inner one, the sound of life itself, of peace of you. The story reminds us not everyone needs a bell to awaken. Some only need silence. The bell is the teaching. Silence is the understanding that follows. In Zen, silence is not escape, it is complete presence. When the mind stops reacting, reality reveals itself exactly as it is. You don't have to chase truth. Just be quiet and truth will speak. If life feels too noisy, full of arguments, words, news, and endless screens, remember turning off the bell does not mean losing awareness. Sometimes awakening begins precisely when the bell stops ringing. Practice a few minutes of silence each day. Sit down. Do nothing. Think nothing. Just breathe. When you let go of the need to achieve something, you are already entering meditation. And in that quiet space, even without a single sound, your heart will begin to hear what 1,000 bells cannot say, that life is here in every breath. On his last day in the town, Genshu rose early and climbed the hill once more. He stood beneath the cracked bell tower, watching the first sunlight touch the silent bronze. He bowed gently, then turned to leave. There was no ringing yet. He heard it clearly within him, the sound of silence. That early morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the mist, Genshu stopped by a small lake nestled in the valley. The water was murky after the night's rain mud floated on the surface, and the faint scent of damp earth lingered in the air. Yet amid that muddy water, a pure white lotus rose, its petals open wide, catching the morning light. Genshu stood still, gazing for a long time. The image touched something deep within him, the contrast between dirt and purity, darkness, and light, suffering and awakening. In the stillness of dawn, he wondered, how can a lotus rise from mud without being tainted? And how can a human being surrounded by karma and pain be reborn so pure? That question marked the beginning of a new spiritual journey, a search to understand karma and rebirth not as distant theories, but as living currents flowing through every breath and every choice. Beside that lotus lake stood a small thatched hut. There lived a young orphan named Kaori. Since childhood, she had been shunned by the villagers because of a strange skin disease, dark patches spreading slowly across her body. No one dared to come near her, fearing contagion. She lived quietly by the lake, picking lotuses each day to sell to pilgrims visiting nearby temples. At sunrise, when the mist began to lift, Kaori would paddle her small wooden boat into the middle of the lake. Her oar touched the water, creating ripples that spread softly like the breath of morning. She bent down, gently plucking each lotus, her movements so careful it was as if she feared hurting a living soul. Genshu, who often stopped by the lake for meditation, once approached and asked, "You pick lotuses from the mud every day. Aren't you afraid of getting dirty?" Kaori looked up, her smile as tender as sunlight. "I'm not afraid of mud, master. Without mud, the lotus could never live." Her words struck Genshu into silence. He looked into her eyes, clear as the lake's surface, yet deep with a peace few ever attain. He realized that some people, though their bodies are afflicted, bring healing to the world through the purity of their hearts. One day, heavy rain poured down, but Kaori still went out to the lake. From a distance, Genshu watched her boat rocking in the wind. Suddenly, she slipped and fell into the water. He rushed over and pulled her to shore. She gasped for breath, covered in mud, yet in her hands she still clutched a closed lotus bud. Genshu asked softly, his voice trembling, "Why didn't you let it go?" Kaori looked at the flower and smiled weakly. "I was afraid that if I let go, it would sink." Genshu stared at her for a long moment, and then nodded slowly. In that instant, he understood something both simple and profound. People often cling to what lies in the mud, an old memory, a wound, a desire. We hold on because we fear that letting go means losing everything. Yet only when we release do we allow the lotus to bloom. Time passed. Kaori's illness worsened. Still, every morning she went to the lake, still picked lotuses, still smiled despite the pain. One morning the villagers found her lying peacefully in her hut, a white lotus gently resting in her hands. They buried her by the lake where in every summer the breeze carried the scent of lotus across the water. A year later, Genshu returned. The lake looked the same, except at its center bloomed one lotus larger and brighter than all the rest. Its petals shone in the morning sun so pure it seemed not of this world. Genshu stood in silence, the wind brushing his robe, and whispered softly, as if afraid to disturb the sacred stillness. Perhaps that is Kaori. She has returned no longer in a frail body, but in the form of purity itself. Her suffering is gone. Only the fragrance of the lotus remains the scent of a cleansed heart. The lake reflected the rising moon. Genshu looked down and saw his reflection merging with that of the lotus. He pressed his palms together and murmured, "The lotus does not grow from mud, but through the acceptance of it." And so it is, with humans only by embracing our own darkness can we bloom into light. The story is a profound symbol of karma and rebirth, the two forces that govern all phenomena in the universe. Karma is not the punishment of the past, but the energy of our actions, the imprint every thought, word, and deed leaves upon consciousness. Like the lotus seed hidden in mud, unaware of when it will sprout, it only needs the right conditions, light and water to rise. That is the rebirth of wholesome karma. The Buddha taught, no one can carry another's karma, yet within suffering lies the path to liberation. If you look closely at your life, you will see countless small rebirths happening each day. Every time you let go of anger, you are being born again. Every time you forgive, a shadow within you dissolves. And every night when you fall asleep, it is a small death followed by a rebirth at dawn. Kaori, too, did not vanish. The energy of her compassion, endurance, and pure faith lived on, reborn in the image of the lotus. The very mud that symbolized suffering and karma became the nourishment for her flowering. Many believe that spiritual practice is about escaping the mud, but true meditation is learning how to remain in the mud, yet still smell of lotus. There are nights when you lie awake with old regrets and unhealed memories. Your mind is like a muddy lake. The more you stir, the murkier it becomes. But if you simply stop, stay still, and let the water settle, the moon of mindfulness will naturally reflect. When you observe suffering without running from it, you create the possibility of rebirth in the present moment. Pain does not disappear because you avoid it. It transforms because you see it clearly and stop identifying with it. If you are hearing these words before sleep, try something simple. Imagine a lotus lake inside your heart. Let all your thoughts, worries, and irritations sink to the bottom like mud. Don't try to clean it, just sit quietly and breathe. Slowly within that darkness, you'll see a small lotus bud rising. That is your innate clarity, always there, only hidden by the sediment of thought. When you fall asleep in that state, you are not just resting, you are being renewed. Medical research shows that in deep meditative states, the body regenerates cells, the nervous system balances itself, and activity in the brain's anxiety centers decreases. In other words, a peaceful mind heals the body. The lotus teaches us purity doesn't mean avoiding the mud. Mud is the past karma, the unavoidable conditions of life. The lotus is awareness, the untainted potential that exists in everyone. In meditation, when you breathe, observe and accept things as they are. You're allowing mud to become lotus not by denial, but by transformation. Remember, karma does not imprison you. It is your attitude toward karma that forms the true chain. When you understand that every challenge is a condition for growth, suffering stops being an enemy and becomes your most patient teacher. So when life pushes you into hardship, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "What is this trying to teach me?" When the question changes, karma shifts as well. And like the lotus, you will realize every wound can become a place where light enters. As Genshu left the lotus lake, he bowed deeply in gratitude. He knew that Kaori had left behind not just a flower, but a timeless teaching, a lesson on karma and rebirth, and the power of purity that can bloom in the midst of a tainted world. That morning, Genshu walked along a village path covered in early mist. Dewdrops on the blades of grass caught the sunlight glimmering like thousands of tiny jewels. He still carried the white thread, the only keepsake left from his late master. After traveling through many villages, witnessing lotuses bloom in mud, and hearing bells ring through silence, he now found himself wondering, can a human being be reborn after the soul has been torn apart? When everything breaks, is there still a way to mend it, or only the ashes of memory? That question stayed with him as he walked. Each step felt like crossing over fragments of his own heart. Failures, losses, the faith that once collapsed. Then, at a small turn in the road, he stopped before an old hut. From inside came a steady sound, stitch, the rhythm of a needle passing through cloth. A seamstress sat by the doorway, frail in frame, but with bright, calm eyes. Before her lay a torn coat. Each stitch she made was slow and firm, as if she were sewing together not only fabric, but the broken stories of a lifetime. Genshu watched quietly, then asked, "Who are you mending the coat for?" The woman smiled. "For a beggar. He passed by yesterday, his coat was ripped. The wind went straight through. I asked to repair it. He told me it was too old, not worth fixing. But I said, as long as it can still hold warmth, it's worth sewing back together." Genshu sat nearby, listening to the sound of the needle. It was like time itself stitching together the torn moments of human life. For several days, Genshu stayed in the hut, quietly watching the seamstress work. She was old, her back slightly bent, her eyes clouded with age. Yet her hands moved steadily as though performing a sacred ritual. Each motion, slow, even, and mindful, was a breath of meditation. No hurry, no distraction, only needle, thread, and breath as one. One afternoon, the golden light of sunset slanted through the doorway, falling on the stretched white thread. Genshu asked, "Doesn't it feel like too much effort? After all this, the beggar may never return." The seamstress looked up and smiled gently. "I don't sew for him, master. I sew so I can see that the torn parts of my own life can also be mended. Each time the needle passes through the cloth, I feel my heart soften." Her words echoed in Genshu's chest, like a bell in the night, simple yet radiant as the full moon. He watched her continue stitching, each thread small and steady like a heartbeat. With every pierce of the needle, she seemed to be mending not only the fabric, but the invisible wounds of existence itself. That night when she had gone to sleep, Genshu remained awake, looking around the hut. The walls were covered with old fabric scraps, all different colors, textures, and sizes. Some frayed at the edges, some torn in half, some stained with old blood. Yet all had been sewn together into a single garment. It wasn't perfect, but it was strangely beautiful, the beauty of endurance of cracks touched by patience. The next morning, the beggar returned. He bowed deeply and accepted the coat. His rough fingers traced the seams, trembling slightly. Then he whispered, "It's not the same as before." The seamstress smiled, her eyes soft like the morning sun. "No, it isn't. But it's stronger now because every stitch was made with patience." Her words made Genshu bow his head. In that moment he understood a quiet truth. Recreation is not about renewal, but acceptance. Healing does not erase the scars, it integrates them into wholeness. Like the coat itself, it doesn't hide the tears, but turns them into proof of human resilience. He stepped outside, watching the sunlight filter through the bamboo leaves and glint on the white thread in her hands. The breeze stirred it gently, fragile yet luminous, like the essence of life itself, and he whispered, "Perhaps everyone is a mender, stitching together what has been torn, reconnecting what was lost. And through this slow work, we learn what healing truly means." In Zen and Japanese tradition, there is an art called kintsugi, the repair of pottery with gold. When a bowl breaks, one does not hide the cracks. Gold is used to fill them so that the fracture becomes the most beautiful part. The seamstress in Genshu's story is the image of a heart that knows how to transform suffering. Many people live like torn garments pierced by loss, betrayal, or regret. We try to discard the damaged parts and replace them with something new, hoping to forget the old. But in the Dharma, nothing new exists apart from the old. There is only transformation from brokenness into completeness, from pain into understanding. The Buddha taught, like one who sews a robe. Each stitch is mindfulness. Each thread is compassion. When the mind stays peaceful with every stitch, the robe becomes whole without striving to make it so. Whether a monk or a lay person, each of us must learn to mending wounds with understanding, anger with forgiveness, confusion with faith. If we don't sow, the tear will widen. If we don't heal, the heart will harden into resentment. In modern psychology, there is a term called post-traumatic growth, the strength that arises after suffering. Studies show that those who face their pain directly often emerge more compassionate, wise, and resilient. Like the seamstress, every time the needle touches the tear, it is an act of courage, and from that courage, light is born from darkness. If you are hearing these words now, perhaps you too carry tears within an ended relationship, a shattered dream, or simply the quiet emptiness that follows long fatigue. Don't try to erase them. Try mending instead. Tonight, before sleep, you can practice this. Imagine you are holding a small needle. Each inhale is the needle passing through a tear in your heart. Each exhale is the thread of understanding weaving it together. You don't need to fix everything tonight. Just mend one small piece, the piece of peace. As your breathing steadies, your mind will soften. Like the seamstress, each mindful stitch is a lesson in patience with yourself. In meditation, healing never hurries because the heart can only heal when it becomes gentle enough to listen to itself. Science now confirms this when people practice mindfulness. Before sleep, their heart rate stabilizes, stress hormones drop, and sleep deepens. The body doesn't just rest, it mends itself, cell by cell, thought by thought, wound by wound. The torn coat teaches us this: nothing is ever lost forever. There are only things waiting to be reconnected through patience. When you look at your wounds without judgment, you transform them into golden wisdom. When you forgive those who hurt you, you are mending the fabric of karma so it no longer tears. Each day, you can practice mending your heart with 4 threads. Compassion, so you stop blaming. Patience, so you don't give up. Mindfulness, so you don't lose your way. Selflessness, so you are no longer bound by form. When these 4 threads weave together, the garment of your life is no longer old. It becomes a tapestry of understanding and love. Genshu finally realized that the white thread his master had given him symbolized exactly that, the thread of connection. Not the connection between people, but between a person and their own awakened heart. And perhaps every one of us is a quiet seamstress, trembling hands, but a steadfast heart, patiently stitching together the fragments of our own lives. The next day, Genshu left the small village. The white thread still hung from his shoulder, but now it was no longer just a relic. It had become a reminder: everything can be mended if the mind remains still. That afternoon, snow began to fall just as Genshu was leaving the small village. The sky was gray and low, the wind cold enough to slip through every fold of his robe. His footsteps touched lightly across the wooden bridge spanning a narrow stream, each sound deep and steady, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Every exhale became a thin cloud of white. In that stillness, he stopped. On the fresh snow before him, a line of footprints stretched across the bridge, fading into the fog beyond. He knelt to look at them. A quiet stirring arose in his heart. Who had crossed this bridge in such bitter cold? And why, under falling snow, do people keep walking forward anyway? A question whispered through his mind. When the heart grows cold, how can one keep the warmth of stillness alive? That night, Genshu found shelter in a small mountain temple. The doors were old and drafty. Wind whistled through the cracks. The oil lamp flickered, throwing trembling shadows on the walls. He gathered a few dry sticks into the hearth and lit a modest fire. The flame wavered weakly, but gave off just enough warmth to ease the chill of the snowbound night. As he sat there, the image of those footprints on the bridge kept returning, fading, then appearing again like snow that never quite covered them. Later, as the night deepened and the wind howled over the roof, there came 3 slow knocks on the temple door. Genshu rose and opened it. Standing before him was a woodcutter cloak, heavy with snow arms, holding a bundle of wet firewood. His face was pale from the cold, yet his eyes shone with a strange calm, serene, untouched by the freezing air. "Reverend," the man said, bowing slightly, his voice hoarse. "May I take shelter here for the night?" Genshu nodded and stepped aside. The woodcutter laid his bundle by the fire, brushed the snow from his shoulders, and sat down. Neither spoke, only the crackle of the fire and the steady rhythm of their breath filled the room, a silence that needed no effort, as though they were breathing together, with the mountain itself. After a long while, the woodcutter said softly, "There are footprints on the bridge outside. They belong to you." Genshu turned to him. "How do you know they're mine?" The woodcutter smiled faintly. "Because I once left my own there. When the snow fell again, they disappeared. You came after me and saw the old ones. By tomorrow morning, new snow will cover yours too." A long silence settled between them. Only the wind sighed through the cracks, carrying a trace of snow into the room. Genshu looked into the fire and asked quietly, "Are you not afraid seeing your footprints vanish?" The woodcutter shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "No, master. Because even when the snow covers them, the path remains." His words dropped into the night like a small light through fog. Genshu gazed out the window, the snow still falling, each flake descending slowly, gently, covering what was once marked. In that moment, he understood every trace in life. Footprints, joy, sorrow exists only for a while. Time is the soft snow of the universe. It erases nothing. It simply smooths everything over so that we stop clinging, stop resisting. Even the deepest wounds will one day be covered by the white snow of stillness and self-understanding. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside the temple, warmth spread quietly. The woodcutter had fallen asleep by the fire. Genshu remained seated, watching the last embers fade. When the final flame went out, he smiled. He understood now light is not in the firewood, but in the one who keeps the heart steady through the storm. The image of footprints on a snowy bridge is an ancient Zen symbol. It reminds us of impermanence. Nothing lasts, not even what once felt most profound. Many people suffer because they keep looking back at their own footprints. The past mistakes, the lost people, the things that could have been, and they believe those impressions will last forever. But the teaching says, what has been pressed into the ground will be erased by the wind. What is past is a lesson, not a sentence. Snow does not only cover, it soothes. It teaches that a still mind is like a white blanket of the cosmos. It does not deny or erase, but gently holds everything until it can heal. Many fear silence. They are used to noise, motion, constant doing to prove that they are alive. But in Zen, stillness is the highest form of movement. When snow falls, the world seems frozen. Yet that is precisely when renewal begins. Modern psychology says something similar. When a person enters a state of calm presence, the parasympathetic nervous system activates, heart rate slows, stress hormones drop, and energy naturally restores. Just as winter allows nature to rest, stillness restores the mind. If a storm is raging in your heart, old memories, unspoken words, or the chill of loneliness, try this small practice before sleep. Imagine yourself standing on a wooden bridge at night, snow falling gently around you. Each exhale is a snowflake descending soft, pure. Each inhale is a slow step, leaving a footprint behind. Then stop. Look at your footprints. Don't try to erase them. Don't try to keep them. Just look as if you're observing your own heart, one that has survived many winters, yet still finds wonder in watching the snow fall. As your breath deepens, let your mind become like the winter sky, vast, quiet, unafraid. Every worry, every memory, every inner voice begins to melt like snow beneath the first sunlight. Science confirms that just 3 minutes of slow, deep breathing can release endorphins, chemicals that ease anxiety and invite relaxation. When the mind settles, the body begins to heal. You don't have to sleep to forget. You sleep to see clearly that everything is already at rest. The snowy night teaches the balance of stillness within movement, warmth within cold. Life will always bring its winter's loss, misunderstanding, solitude. But as long as we keep a small fire alive in the heart, the snow will never truly feel cold. The Buddha once said, "Within the heart lies a light. No matter how long the night, it never fades." Stillness is not emptiness. It is completeness without the need for addition. When you stop resisting, your mind becomes like the snow, reflecting everything, holding on to nothing. And in that not holding, peace is found. Each night before sleep, you might whisper softly to yourself, "May all the footprints of this day be covered by the white snow of understanding." Let it be a prayer bringing your heart back to the present. No need to fix, no need to regret. Just see clearly, all things that have passed are only footprints slowly fading. And beneath that gentle snow, the path remains, waiting for your next step, lighter and more peaceful than before. After the long snowy night, the ground was blanketed in white and the sky remained dim and heavy. Genshu continued his journey, walking slowly through a dense forest where only the sound of wind moved through the bare branches. Each breath he released dissolved into the cold mist like life itself, searching to find its way back. From afar across the white landscape, he saw a faint glimmer of light, a small golden glow, trembling like the last breath of an oil lamp. Following the narrow trail, he came upon an old wooden house. Before the porch stood a tall pine tree, silent amidst the snow. From one of its branches hung a small golden lantern, not bright, but enough to cast a soft light on the darkness around it. He stood there quietly for a long time, watching that fragile glow. A question rose within him. When all around is darkness, what gives a person the faith to keep a light burning? The house belonged to an old woman who lived alone. When Genshu knocked, she opened the door and welcomed him with a gentle smile. The small home rested humbly among the pines, its wooden walls darkened by years of kitchen smoke. A small charcoal brazier glowed in the center of the room, radiating a tender warmth that softened the mountain night's chill. On the wall hung several faded paintings, their colors blurred by time, yet still carrying the touch of someone who once loved life deeply. The golden light from the porch shone faintly through the window, illuminating the woman's wrinkled face until it looked as kind as moonlight at dawn. Genshu glanced outside. On the pine tree, a small lantern swayed gently in the snowy wind, its flame flickering but never dying. He asked, "Do you hang that lantern on the pine every night?" She nodded softly, her clouded eyes shining with simple conviction. "Yes. Every night I light it, not to guide anyone's path, but to remind myself that every night still holds some light, no matter how small." Genshu remained silent, listening to the wind sigh past the eaves. The woman began to speak. Many years ago, the village at the foot of the mountain had been destroyed by a great flood. Her only son, still young then, had run out to save others and never returned. After the flood, she moved up the mountain and lived alone in this little house. At first, she lit the lantern each night and hung it on the pine tree, the same tree where she and her son used to gather pine cones together. The small light shimmered in the snow like a gentle call. "My child, come home." Her voice trembled slightly, yet it was as soft as wind through leaves. At first I lit the lantern to call his spirit back, but as the years passed I realized that light wasn't to call the dead, it was to keep the flame alive in my own heart. Genshu sat in silence for a long time. He looked out toward the porch. The wind blew fiercely, snowflakes swirling in the dark, yet the lantern swayed steadily. Its flame was small, but it refused to die. Each time the wind struck, the fire bent, then rose again brighter than before. The old woman continued, her gaze distant. There were nights when the wind was so strong I thought, tonight the lantern must have gone out. But in the morning it was still shining. Then I understood. True light doesn't come from oil or fire, but from the will that refuses to fade. Genshu placed his palms together and bowed deeply. Warmth spread through him, not from the brazier, but from the light within this frail old woman's heart. A single lantern hanging in the dark forest, yet enough to warm an entire lifetime. When he left her home, he turned back once more. Snow still fell. The sky was still dark, yet in the midst of it, the small golden lantern still hung steadfast among the branches, quietly glowing. And in that moment, Genshu understood. Faith is not believing in certainty, but daring to hold light even when no one has promised the dawn. In Zen, the small light shining in the dark symbolizes faith, and right understanding the clarity of vision that shines amid ignorance. The old woman needed no deep philosophy, no long scriptures. She simply lit a lantern, an act simple, yet filled with the very essence of Buddhist teaching, to act with mindfulness, not for results, but to keep the light of the heart alive. When we lose hope, we often look outward for people money promises to cling to. But true light doesn't come from outside. It is the heart's ability to kindle itself. The Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." The old woman's golden lantern was precisely that inner lamp. Though fragile, it had the power to illuminate the darkness of ignorance, filled with fear, resentment, and despair. When a person loses all hope, the mind often falls into an emotional shutdown, where the brain releases less dopamine, making life feel meaningless. But when we do even one small conscious act, lighting a candle, watering a plant, praying, or simply breathing deeply, the brain receives a message, "I am still alive." From there, energy slowly returns. Faith doesn't arise from thought, but from mindful action. Have you ever had nights when anxiety filled your mind, when everything around seemed swallowed by darkness? In those moments, instead of fighting the darkness, try lighting a small golden lantern within your own heart. Sit quietly. Take a deep breath. Imagine a tiny lamp resting in the center of your chest, a warm, gentle golden light spreading with each breath. With every inhale, it glows a little brighter. With every exhale, that light spreads through your body, softening every tense place within you. Don't try to silence your thoughts. Just let your mind sit beside that light like Genshu, standing under the pine in the snowy night. As your mind quiets, you'll realize something: darkness is not the enemy. It is the space where light becomes visible. Modern science confirms that warm golden light stimulates the brain to release serotonin, a neurotransmitter that eases anxiety, steadies the heart, and creates a sense of safety. It's no coincidence that ancient Zen temples used golden or soft red lamps in meditation halls. Those are the colors of faith and life. The old woman lit her lantern, not out of fear of darkness, but out of gratitude for it, because darkness allowed her to see the light more clearly. In life, we are the same. Only after loss, loneliness, or failure do we truly understand the power of faith, when there's nothing left to hold on to. The Buddha never promised that the path of practice would always be bright. He only taught us how to keep a lantern in our hearts. When you feel lost or hopeless, remember you don't need to light a lighthouse, just one small flame of understanding kindness or mindful breath. That light will guide you home. Before you fall asleep tonight, whisper quietly to yourself, "I do not seek the light out there. I light it within myself." Then lie down, close your eyes, and picture that small golden flame still glowing gently in your chest. Your body will relax. Your mind will stand still like a pine tree in snow, no longer struggling, no longer waiting. Only a peaceful presence remains enough to warm the entire night. When you practice this each evening, you train your mind to return to its natural center of calm. You don't need to fight sadness. Just stay with it, like the old woman sitting under the pine, watching her lantern sway and not fearing it will go out. True faith is not believing that everything will be good. It is believing that you will stay calm even when everything is at its worst. That morning, a thick fog still clung to the mountainside. After a long, snowy night, the ground was damp and cold, glittering with drops of dew resting on the tips of the grass. On the path down the mountain, where a small stream wound through the rocks, Genshu saw an old man sitting silently by the water. The pale light of dawn fell upon his hair, where among the strands of black a single silver hair shimmered faintly. He was clearly a former soldier. His straight posture and watchful eyes made that unmistakable. The old man sat gazing into his palm, where he held that fallen strand of hair. Genshu stopped, pressed his palms together in greeting, and sat down beside him. For a long while neither spoke. The only sounds were the trickling of the stream and the distant calls of birds on the hill. Finally, the old soldier spoke, his voice heavy and rough. "When I was young, I used to swing my sword against the wind, thinking I could change the world. Now even a single fallen hair can bring me to tears." He lifted his gaze, looking into the distance. "I used to hate many people. Now I only hate myself for having carried hatred for so long." Genshu asked softly, "Do you regret fighting or surviving?" The man stayed silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I regret forgetting how to love myself." The words fell into the mist like the sound of a bell at dawn, faint yet echoing deep. Genshu felt a wave of quiet sorrow rise within him. Years ago, that man had been a general who guarded the borderlands. He was once heroic praised as the man who knew no fear. On the battlefield, he led the charge. The shouts of his soldiers thundered like storms, and the blade in his hand gleamed through the smoke and blood. No one dared look him in the eye, the same eyes that could make enemies retreat with a single glance. But in one brutal battle, thousands fell, among them his closest friend, the man who had once shared his last piece of bread in the desert. The general's heart shattered like a cracked mirror. The sound of his sword dropping that day still echoed in his ears, louder than any war drum. People said he returned victorious, but he knew something inside him had died with those who never came back. After leaving the army, he refused promotions or honors. He didn't return to the city. Instead, he chose to live alone in a small village at the mountain's edge. Each morning, he would go to the stream and sit for hours, watching the water flow over the stones, perhaps waiting for some miracle that could wash away memory. But the water kept flowing year after year while memory remained. The villagers called him the silent old soldier. Children sometimes ran after him, throwing stones before running away, thinking he was mad. He never grew angry. He would simply pick up the stones, drop them into the stream, and watch them sink. If you let go, he would whisper, "Everything settles." But his heart did not. One rainy afternoon, beneath a gray sky, he bent over the stream and saw his reflection. The proud general was gone. Only an old face remained lined with wrinkles and dulled by fear. He stared for so long that the rain soaked through his shoulders, and in that reflection he saw something else, a frightened lost child looking for a place to hide in the dark. That child was himself from long ago, when war had taken his parents and planted the first seeds of fear in his heart. He sat frozen. After all these years, he realized he had fought the whole world enemies, fate memories, but never once paused to hold that scared child within him. Every wound on his body had healed except the one in his heart, the one he had never dared to face. That night, as he combed his hair by the fire, a single white hair fell into his hand. He stared at it for a long while, then suddenly laughed. Something so small, yet it felt like a message from the universe, a sign that time no longer wanted him to carry his sword through life. He placed the strand of hair in his palm and closed his eyes. Outside, the rain fell softly, and through it, he heard the sound of the stream, no longer cold and distant, but like the quiet breath of compassion. The next morning, the villagers found him sitting by the stream as usual. But something was different. His shoulders were relaxed, his eyes calm as the water before him. No one knew that the night before he had fought the final battle of his life and won. And on that battlefield, the victor was not the stronger man, but the one who knew how to stop and forgive. In Buddhism, forgiveness is not forgetting, it is understanding. When we see deeply into the causes of suffering, hatred dissolves naturally. The old soldier once thought he was strong when he endured pain, when he punished himself with guilt. But that too was just another form of ego, the self trying to prove it deserved its suffering. The Buddha taught no one can save you but yourself. And when you see that those who hurt you are themselves in pain, hatred melts away. The old man no longer hated those who killed his friend. He hated himself for allowing hatred to turn him to stone. But when he saw that white hair, he finally understood. Everything is impermanent. This body, these memories, even the deepest mistakes, all are part of the endless flow of time. From the Zen view, non-self doesn't mean nothing exists. It means there is no fixed me to hate, to blame, or to cling to. When you realize this, the heart softens like a stream flowing past rocks, no longer striking them, only cooling them. Modern psychology calls this the closed loop of self-judgment. Those who carry guilt for years replay their pain again and again, convincing the brain that the past is still happening. But when they face their feelings without resistance, the nervous system begins to rebalance. Studies show that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, lowers heart rate, reduces stress hormones, and improves sleep. If you carry unspoken pain, guilt, regret, or self-blame, pause for a moment. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Imagine you are sitting by a stream like that old soldier. Beneath the surface, you might see your reflection tired, critical, or heavy with shame. Don't try to erase it. Just look. Look long enough until you see behind that face a soul that simply longs to be understood. Whisper softly to yourself, "I did the best I could with what I knew at the time." This is not an excuse, it is the truth. Each of us at any given moment acts from the level of understanding we have. If you could have done better, then it's because you've already grown since. Spiritual growth begins when self-judgment ends. As you breathe in that acceptance, your whole body will begin to relax. The tension in your shoulders, chest, and neck will ease. Your breathing will slow and deepen. The mind will grow still, no longer fighting the past or fleeing the future. You don't have to erase memory. Just let it flow like water down the stream. Each night, before sleep, imagine washing your hands in that water. Each exhale releases a little more self-blame. Each inhale invites gentleness back into your heart. Science shows that those who practice self-compassion sleep more deeply and have fewer nightmares because the brain no longer triggers the fight or flight response. Like the old soldier, once you stop fighting the past, sleep will finally come, the first real rest in years. True compassion is not only for others, it must begin with yourself. A person who cannot love themselves, no matter how kind they appear, will eventually burn out. The Buddha taught, if you cannot love yourself, you cannot truly love anyone else. Compassion is not something you give, it is something that radiates. The old soldier had spent half a lifetime in anger, but in one single moment, when he realized his pain was shared by all beings, the weight lifted. When he could finally love the frightened child within, he could love the world as well. And that is non-self, no separate. I left to hate, to hurt, or to demand repayment. When there is no I, there is only the flow of understanding and love, like a stream running through the forest, choosing no path, asking no reason, quietly nourishing all it touches. This practice is simple yet profound. Each day, once as you look in the mirror or comb your hair, pause when a white hair falls. Don't mourn time. Smile and say, I've been through much, but now I have finally come home to myself. In that moment, you won't just see aging, you'll see the proof of release and the grace of maturity. That morning, the sun had just risen behind the mountains, casting a soft golden light over the quiet temple by the river. The water murmured gently. Leaves fell in slow spirals. A cool breeze carried the scent of damp earth. After meeting the old soldier the day before, Genshu continued his journey down toward the plains. Each step on the gravel path felt as if he were walking between two worlds, one real and one a reflection of himself in the river below. He stopped at the water's edge and looked down at his reflection rippling on the surface. Light wind and clouds blended together. In that still moment, a question arose within him. Do we really see others as they are, or do we only see the reflection of ourselves in them? A small question, yet it opened a deep door within. Because sometimes what we love or hate in others is merely what we have not yet understood in ourselves. When Genshu stopped in a small village, he met a potter named Ray. The man was known for both his gentleness and his temper. He had skillful hands shaping clay into delicate, graceful vases so fine that villagers said they carried the soul of the earth. Yet, if anyone so much as said, "It's a little uneven," or "the color could be smoother," Ray would flush red with anger and smash the pot right in front of them. Everyone in the village was wary of him. They avoided speaking their honest thoughts, knowing his fury could flare up as quickly as a spark catching dry straw. That day, Ray saw Genshu sitting by the river, eyes still and calm as the water. He approached and said bitterly, "You know, Master, I despise people who just sit there doing nothing." Genshu turned toward him, his gaze soft like the morning sun. "Perhaps you don't despise them," he said. "You only despise the part of yourself that cannot be still." Ray froze. The words struck like a hammer to the chest. He forced a smile. "Being still doesn't change anything. If I don't act, who will change the world?" Genshu didn't reply immediately. He bent down, picked up a small stone, and tossed it into the river. Ripples spread outward, then slowly disappeared until the water became calm again. "Do you see?" he said softly. "When we throw a stone, the water doesn't resist. It simply ripples, then returns to peace. But people, when angry, keep throwing invisible stones into their own hearts and then wonder why they never find calm." Ray said nothing. He watched the ripples fade as if seeing his own anger slowly dissolve. "But how do I stop throwing stones?" he asked quietly. Genshu bent down again, picked up another pebble and placed it in Ray's palm. "Don't throw it," he said. "Just hold it and feel its weight. See, it isn't heavy, but if you hold it too long, your hand will grow tired. When it does, you'll know it's time to let go. Anger is the same." Ray looked at the stone in his hand, then out at the river. The water shimmered softly in the late afternoon light. His chest loosened. Perhaps he had never let himself be still long enough to see what was really inside him. After a while, he sighed. "I think I understand now. I thought I was trying to change the world, but I was only fighting the parts of myself I couldn't accept." Genshu smiled. "The people who hurt us are only mirrors reflecting the parts we haven't understood. When you can see them through compassion, anger melts like a stone sinking into water." That evening, the sun set behind the bamboo grove, casting gold across the river's surface. Ray stood for a long time at the water's edge, still holding the pebble. When he finally dropped it, the ripples spread and vanished as if nothing had happened. But something within him had changed, not the world outside, but the world inside. In Buddhism, there is a subtle truth. The outer world is the reflection of the mind. Everything we see, hear, and react to begins in our own consciousness. When the mind is unsettled, the world appears distorted. When the mind is clear, everything becomes gentle and kind. Ray the potter didn't truly hate others. He simply couldn't bear the imperfection within himself. He didn't realize that every criticism was just a mirror showing him the hidden corners of his own being that he had long refused to face. It is like standing before a river. If the water is clear, you see the sky. If the water is muddy, you only see your own distorted reflection. Yet instead of clearing the water, people often try to change the sky. Zen has an old saying, "When the mind is at peace, all things are at peace. When the mind is restless, the world tilts." This means if you see others as unjust, selfish, or cold, step back and ask, "Is there a part of me that is also being unjust, selfish, or cold toward myself. Only when we recognize that reflection can true understanding and compassion arise. Modern psychology calls this projection the act of casting out what we cannot accept within ourselves and seeing it in others instead. That's why the people who irritate us most are often the ones helping us see ourselves most clearly. Think of someone who unsettles you, someone who hurt you, betrayed you, or simply makes you uneasy. Don't rush to call them your karma. They may simply be a mirror reflecting what you still haven't released. If as you lie down to sleep, your mind feels tangled, part love, part anger, part forgiveness, part pain, try this simple meditation. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine a calm river before you. On the surface, you see the image of that person. Look carefully not to judge, but to recognize they too are afraid. They too suffer. They too are only trying to survive just like you. Then let the image slowly dissolve into the water. Don't erase it. Don't force it. Just let it fade naturally. With each breath, the surface grows still again. You'll notice the more you let go, the deeper your sleep becomes. Because the mind has stopped fighting what it cannot control. Neuroscience confirms that when the brain enters the alpha state, the relaxed awareness of observation without resistance, the parasympathetic nervous system activates, heart rate slows, and the body enters natural restoration. This is what Zen calls sleeping in meditation. So instead of trying to remove the person who caused your pain, observe them as you would the surface of water. Don't resist. Don't cling. Just watch. The Buddha taught among all things, nothing truly stands apart. Self and others, subject and object arise from the same source. To understand this is to transform opposition into empathy. When you see someone acting harshly, look deeper, they are suffering. When you feel powerless, realize your own mind is resisting itself. And in that realization, compassion stops being an idea and becomes a natural response born of understanding. Everything in life, words, actions, situations is a mirror reflecting the state of our heart. When we see this clearly, the world becomes lighter. We no longer need to change others nor flee from hardship. We only need to keep the water clear, and the sky will reflect itself. Try this in your everyday life. When someone says something that hurts, you don't react immediately. Take a deep breath and look at them as you would look at a river. Ask yourself, am I seeing this person? Or am I seeing my own fear reflected through them? That single question is enough to dissolve the first ripple in your heart. And when you practice this long enough, you'll find that everything around you begins to soften, not because the world has changed, but because you've stopped throwing stones into the water. Night rain fell softly on the bamboo forest. Drops tapped rhythmically on the old tiled roof, then faded into the distance like a faraway bell. After a long journey through villages and mountain paths, Genshu stopped beneath the eaves of a small temple nestled in mist. The warmth from the fire inside mingled with the scent of tea and the sound of falling rain calming his heart. He looked out at the flooded courtyard, where a young novice monk was scooping water from a wooden bucket, pouring it over the ground in a determined effort to make it dry. The innocent absurdity of it made Genshu smile, then fall silent. A question quietly rose within him. Why do people as they grow older lose the natural purity they once had? As children, we look at the world with gentle eyes, believing everything is possible. But as we age, worry, fear, and doubt begin to cloud those eyes. That question led Genshu to a deep realization. Perhaps enlightenment is not about becoming higher, but about returning to the simple clarity we once knew. The young novice's name was En. He was about 10 years old, his face bright, his eyes clear and shining like 2 drops of water, reflecting the whole sky. That day rain had fallen since dawn, steady and heavy. The temple yard was flooded, bamboo leaves scattered everywhere, and cold wind rattled the wooden doors. His master gave him a task: sweep the courtyard so visitors can enter the temple. En bowed respectfully and began sweeping eagerly one spot after another. But no matter how hard he worked, the water kept rising. Mud spread across the path. Puddles turned into mirrors, reflecting the gray sky. The harder he swept, the wetter everything became. His robe was soaked, his hair clung to his forehead, his small hands trembled from the cold. Still, he didn't stop. He thought only, if I give up, visitors will slip and fall. From the veranda, Genshu watched in silence. The oil lamp flickered, casting a soft glow across the monk's serene face. After a while, he stepped into the rain and called gently, "What are you doing, little one?" En looked up. His face was wet and muddy, but his eyes still shone. "I'm trying to make the courtyard dry so the visitors won't slip, master." Genshu smiled kindly. "Do you think you can make the ground dry while the rain is still falling?" En froze. The sound of rain filled the silence, drumming on tiles, dripping from bamboo leaves, mingling with his quick, uneven breath. After a moment, he bowed his head and whispered, "Then, what should I do?" Master Genshu placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice deep and warm. "When rain is falling, you cannot make the earth dry. Your task is not to fight the rain, but to learn how to listen to it." En frowned, unsure of what that meant, but he followed his teacher's words. He set the broom down and stood still in the rain. The drops were cold at first, sharp against his skin. Then something changed. The sound of the rain was no longer loud or chaotic. It became soft like a chant. He could hear the water touching the leaves, the earth breathing, even the rhythm of his own heartbeat. All his worry, restlessness, and fatigue began to fade. He no longer wanted to sweep the courtyard. He just stood there, breathing and listening. And in that moment, he realized something he hadn't seen all morning. It wasn't the rain that made him suffer. It was his wish for the rain to stop. When the rain eased and sunlight peeked through the clouds, the courtyard shimmered. Reflections danced across puddles like fragments of glass. The bamboo leaves still fell. The ground was still wet, but inside En felt light, dry, and peaceful. Genshu looked at him and nodded softly. "You see, when your mind becomes still, the world stops with it." En smiled and bowed. For the first time in his life, he understood meditation, not as sitting motionless with closed eyes, but as standing in the rain and remaining calm inside. In Zen, this state is called, "The mind is the sky. Rain is only what passes through." The little monk tried to dry the courtyard just as we try to make life perfect, always peaceful, never sad, never afraid. But life is the rain, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. Trying to dry it while it's still falling is futile, because the problem is never the water, but how we see the water. Most of human suffering doesn't come from what happens, but from wishing things were different. We want people to behave as we expect circumstances to go our way, and emotions to always feel pleasant. When they don't, we struggle, grow angry, and despair, like the little monk sweeping endlessly in the storm. When we stop and look deeply, we realize the rain is not against us. It's simply being rain. Our hearts get wet only when we refuse to accept it. The Buddha once said, "When the mind is undisturbed, even the winds of karma cannot shake it." That means when the mind is clear without clinging or resistance, no matter how the world shifts, inner peace remains. The innocence of young En was pure mindfulness itself. When he stopped sweeping and simply listened, there was no self and no rain, no sweeper, no wet ground, only presence. In that moment, he was meditating without even knowing it. Your life may be like that rain. You may be trying too hard to control everything. Your work relationships, health, even emotions. You want to dry the courtyard of your life. But the harder you try, the more the water rises. Sometimes the most profound act is to stop. You don't need to fix everything. Just observe. Take a slow, deep breath. Listen to the rain inside. Maybe it's worry, guilt, or endless thoughts. Don't silence it. Let it fall. In sleep meditation, there's a practice called listening to silence. When you lie down, don't resist the sounds around you. Listen to the rain, the hum of a car, the ticking clock, as if they're all part of one soft song. Soon, everything will blend together. Your body will loosen. Your breath will slow. Sleep will come as gently as a drifting cloud. Modern science confirms this when we stop reacting and simply observe our brain waves shift into the theta state, just like deep meditation. The body begins to heal itself. What the little novice did just standing and listening to the rain was meditation in its purest form. The Buddha taught, when the mind is pure like a child's, truth can be seen in every drop of water, in every breath. And didn't need any complex philosophy to find stillness. He only needed to stop and be fully present in that one moment. That is the lesson for all of us. Don't seek peace in distant places. It already lives in the moment you're breathing now. When you're worried, ask, where am I right now? When you're sad, ask, am I truly here? When you're afraid, ask what part of me is asking to be heard. And instead of trying to sweep away the rain, learn to stand still and let it pass. The purity of a child's heart is not naivety. It's wisdom untouched by judgment. A pure-hearted person is not one who has never suffered, but one who can smile through the storm wet, but not sorrowful cold, yet still joyful. Let your mind become like the moon, after the storm unstained by the mud, simply reflecting its own light. Then even the sound of rain becomes a sacred verse. When the rain stopped, Genshu stepped out into the courtyard. The young novice En was playing with puddles, each of his footsteps sending ripples outward. The sunset reflected on the surface of the water, looking like hundreds of tiny suns dancing in the fading light. Genshu smiled softly. He knew the boy had just learned a meditation lesson that many people spend their whole lives never grasping. When we stop trying to make the world dry, we finally see the clear sky within our own hearts. The night in the deep mountains was colder than usual. Wind slipped through the wooden shutters, carrying the scent of damp earth and the faint trace of incense just extinguished. After the rain, the bamboo forest outside the meditation hall was still wet, the moonlight blurred by thin mist. Inside the small room, only a single candle flickered in the darkness. Genshu sat still, watching the flame tremble. The temple had fallen into sleep. Only the quiet hum of insects remained, like the gentle breathing of the night. He remembered the little novice standing silently in the afternoon rain, listening so deeply that his mind became clear. Now, in this stillness, another question arose within him. What helps us keep the light alive in our hearts when everything around us falls into darkness? That question was not only for monks. Every human being, wherever they live, experiences long nights of confusion. When hope weakens like a candle about to go out, when faith wavers, when anxiety and loneliness spread through the mind. In those moments, we need something the winds of life cannot extinguish: the light of mindfulness. Many years earlier, during a bitter winter, Genshu's old temple lost electricity. The meditation hall sank into darkness. The monks panicked. Some searched for lanterns, others worried that the evening meditation could not begin. But Genshu remained seated. From within his sleeve, he took out a small candle. Its weak flame spread gently through the room, casting a calm glow across his peaceful face. He spoke quietly. Just one candle can change the darkness of an entire room. So each of you light your own candle. The disciples followed his example. Gradually, light filled the meditation hall. The room was bright again, not because of one great flame, but because many small ones shone together. Then a sudden gust of wind blew through, and the disciples' candles went out one by one. Only Genshu's flame remained. A young monk said anxiously, "Master, the wind has blown out all of our candles." Genshu looked at them and smiled gently. "It's all right. Come here and light them again from this one." One by one they bent down and carefully rekindled their candles from his flame. Soon the room glowed once more. When every candle was burning bright, Genshu softly blew out his own. The disciples were surprised. One asked, "Master, why did you put out your candle?" Genshu replied, "Because the light does not belong to any single flame. When it has already filled the room, keeping one for myself would be unnecessary." He looked around, smiling gently. True light doesn't come from wax or fire. It comes from the mind that knows how to shine. When your mind is awake, darkness disappears. The candle that night became a symbol of mindfulness, a small flame, but enough to illuminate the whole inner world. In daily life, we often let the winds of afflictions blow out that flame, the wind of anger, the wind of envy, or the storm of fear. When the mind is swept away, we mistake darkness for truth and forget that the light is still there, merely hidden. Mindfulness doesn't stop the wind, it simply teaches us how to protect the flame. That is the power of awareness, knowing what we're thinking, what we're feeling, without being carried away by it. In the Buddha's teachings, this light is called prajna wisdom, the clear seeing of reality. It doesn't blaze like the sun, but glows like a candle, gentle yet enough to show the way. The Buddha said, "Just as a lamp dispels the darkness, mindfulness illuminates every illusion." The human mind is like a house at night. When the light is on, every corner becomes visible. When it's off, everything feels vague and frightening. But the nature of the house never changes, only the presence or absence of light. When you lie down after a long day, your mind may still be crowded with unfinished thoughts. Tasks left undone, words unsaid, feelings unresolved. That's when the darkness of the mind thickens. If you try to force it away, you only make the wind stronger. Try something different. Light a candle of mindfulness. Simply notice your breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. Feel your body resting on the bed. Feel life unfolding right now. Don't try to stop thinking. Just know that you're thinking. Don't try to stop worrying. Just see that worry is there. Like a person shielding a candle from the wind, you don't need to fight, only to protect it gently. Neuroscientists have found that just a few minutes of mindful breathing activates the prefrontal cortex, reducing stress and allowing the body to enter a natural state of rest. Sleep then becomes not an escape, but deep restoration. When your mind shines, even like a single candle, every dream becomes gentler. Genshu's candle reminds us the awakened mind is a light that can never be taken away. You don't need to wait for life to be calm to feel peace. Peace doesn't come from outside, it comes from the inner light that clearly sees each movement within you. When we learn to illuminate ourselves, darkness dissolves on its own. Let every small act in life become a candle. When you wash your hands, wash with mindfulness. When you eat, know that you're eating. When you speak, be aware of the seeds your words plant. Gradually that light spreads, not only within you, but to everyone around you. The Buddha once said, "When one person lights a lamp for another, their own light is not diminished." Just as Genshu blew out his candle when his disciples had found their own, because true light belongs to no one. It is the expression of wisdom, compassion, and the mind that is fully present. When we understand this, we no longer fear the dark, because every time darkness arrives, we know it's a chance to see the light more clearly. That meditation night ended in silence. Genshu sat still, watching the thin smoke rise from the melted wax. In the pale light of the late moon, he saw a white thread lying on the table, the same one his master had given him years ago. He picked it up, feeling its faint warmth. That thread once symbolized the connection between stillness and all things. Now it reminded him of the path. He must continue to return to the beginning, to the old temple that had once burned down, perhaps now being rebuilt within his own heart. The candle had gone out, but its light remained within him. Early morning. The sun had just risen beyond the distant mountains. A thin veil of mist still covered the valley like a white silk cloth. Genshu sat on the stone steps before his small hermitage, silently gazing at the white thread in his hand, the same thread his master had given him years ago, when he left the old temple, the one that was consumed by fire. A gentle breeze stirred. The thread trembled softly. The first light of dawn glimmered on it, making it shine as if it had a soul. Genshu closed his fingers around it, and a quiet question rose from deep within his heart. What has truly been reborn, the temple or my own mind? That question felt like an echo from the distant past. Through many years of wandering from village to village, Genshu once thought he was searching for the place he belonged. But the farther he walked, the clearer he saw that place had never been lost. It had only been waiting to be recognized, not with the eyes, but with an awakened mind. One late spring afternoon, after a long journey across rugged mountain paths, Genshu finally returned to the old mountain. Before him lay only scattered stones and charred tree stumps. No sound of bells, no morning chants, only wind passing through the emptiness, carrying the scent of ashes mixed with wild grass. Genshu knelt down and touched his forehead to the ground. A tear fell onto the cold earth. Yet strangely, there was no pain, only a peace as light as mist. He took out the white thread and tied it to a dry branch amid the temple ruins. The branch quivered, the thread swaying gently in the wind. A young shepherd boy passing by stopped and asked curiously, "Old man, why are you tying a thread to a dead tree?" Genshu smiled and replied, "This tree isn't dead. It's resting. Just like this mountain, though it was burned black, a stream still flows beneath its surface." The boy thought for a while, then asked, "If the tree comes back to life, will you stay here forever?" Genshu looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted slowly. "I'll stay," he said, "but not in the way you think. I'll be in every gust of wind, every drop of rain, in every bell tone the wind gently rings when this temple breathes again." The boy blinked. "But how can the wind stay?" Genshu smiled. "Because the wind clings to nothing, that's why it's everywhere." That simple sentence became the final revelation of Genshu's long journey. When Genshu returned, the temple had no form, but he realized its Dharma body was still alive. In Buddhism, the Dharma body Dharmakaya is the timeless nature of all things pure awareness itself. Everything we see and hear is form. What perceives those forms is what never burns. Likewise, every human body will change and fade away. But what we've learned of love, forgiveness, and wisdom, that is the temple within, where light never dies. The white thread symbolizes the connection between mindfulness and all phenomena. When Genshu tied it to the dry branch, he wasn't rebuilding the old temple. He was awakening the life energy within himself. The outer temple is an image. The inner temple is the reality. When you suffer and think everything is lost, what's truly gone is only the form of peace. Its essence remains untouched. In Zen, this is called formless presence, nothing to grasp yet fully here. A mindful person is like Genshu, not seeking peace in a beautiful temple, nor in incense or bells, but recognizing peace in each breath, in every living moment. Many people ask, how can I feel peaceful in such a chaotic world? How can I sleep when my heart is restless, full of regret or fear of the past? The answer lies in Genshu's act. Stop, look deeply, and accept. When you stop and acknowledge what is your mind, no longer chases what's gone. Like sitting quietly in the dark after turning off the light, you realize that illumination isn't gone. It still exists within your capacity to see. Each night before sleep, if you can place your hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat, and whisper, "I am still here. The temple within me remains." Then, in that very moment, you've returned to your own white thread, the connection between body and mind, between presence and timeless peace. Modern science agrees just a few minutes of mindful breathing, slow and deep, reduces activity in the sympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for anxiety and stress, and restores the brain to its natural balance. When that happens, sleep comes effortlessly. You don't need to find peace. You only need to recognize that it's already here. When Genshu saw the white thread swaying in the wind, he understood that the temple had been reborn within his heart. The Buddha taught, when the mind is pure, the world is pure. If your heart is bright, even a pile of ashes becomes sacred ground. If your heart is full of hatred, even the grandest temple cannot make you feel safe. The mind's perception creates the world we live in. When someone hurts you, they mirror the part of you that still aches. When a situation frightens you, it reflects the part of you that hasn't yet trusted. So Genshu didn't rebuild the temple. He rebuilt his faith in the indestructible Buddha nature. In your own life, when facing hardship, do the same. Don't rush to fix the world. Look into your own heart. If you look with compassion, the world softens. If you look with mindfulness, what once hurt becomes transparent. Like a raindrop on stone, it seems to vanish, but it only seeps into the earth and returns through the stream. Everything transforms as long as you stop clinging. That afternoon, a mountain wind arose. The white thread lifted from the branch, twirling into the sky before disappearing among the clouds. Genshu stood still, eyes following it. He felt no sadness, no regret. He knew the thread had completed its purpose. Then a sound rang out a bell. No one had struck it yet. The tone echoed softly through the valley, mingling with the wind and falling leaves. Genshu closed his eyes, smiling gently. The old temple had come alive again, not through bricks and stone, but through the awakened mind. Night fell. Moonlight spread across the ruined temple grounds, illuminating the cold, dark stones. Genshu sat still, breathing evenly as if part of the mountain itself. A yellow leaf drifted down before him. A dewdrop upon it caught the moonlight, shimmering round and clear like the Buddha's eye. In that instant, he understood nothing is ever lost. Silence doesn't vanish, it only changes form. Like a thread, linking lifetime's light and shadow, birth and death. The sound faded, his breath merged with the wind. The bell's echo dissolved into the night, and within the gentlest whisper of darkness, these words arose like a final gatha. Silence is never lost. It only changes form like a thread that weaves all lives together. When you lie down to rest tonight, don't cling to these teachings as if you're afraid they'll fade away. Let them dissolve like the white thread flying in the wind light. But unbroken, delicate, but never gone. What is meant to remain will stay. What has touched your heart will find its way deeper within, even if you don't try to remember. Breathe slowly. Feel the warmth of your blanket, the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat, the calm rise and fall of your breath. Everything is supporting you. The ground, the air, the stillness filling the room. Right now, you are safe. No matter what tomorrow brings, you can face it with the wisdom you've touched tonight. Genshu once walked through loss, found himself again through the ashes of the past. And when the white thread drifted away, he understood that what had revived was not the temple, but the peace returning to his heart. In the same way your peace does not lie in the outer world. It doesn't need to be created, only recognized. It has always been here beneath layers of worry memory and unfinished plans. When you stop grasping, when you allow the mind to rest, peace naturally emerges gentle and quiet as the wind passing through the mountains. Tonight, you don't need to try to meditate or force your mind to be still. Let everything be as natural as breathing. Let thoughts come and go. Let feelings drift and dissolve. Let the light of mindfulness flow through your breath, your heartbeat, and every moment of your release. Peace is not a reward, it is your true nature. Sleep is simply another way to return to that stillness. As the body rests, the mind returns to its source, and in that space, ancient wisdom continues its quiet work, healing, restoring, renewing. If you listen closely, you'll see the white thread not only connected Genshu to his past, but also connects you to the silence within yourself. When you pause, breathe, and listen, you too are following that thread, returning to the inner temple where the bell has never stopped ringing. Trust that no matter how loud the world becomes within you, there is a temple that can never burn, where silence shines like the moon, and peace waits for you each time you close your eyes. So tonight, allow yourself to rest deeply. Let your body sink into the bed, your breath grow light as smoke. Let the white thread within you tremble softly, guiding you home. Today is complete. What you needed to understand, you have understood. What remains unclear, let the winds of tomorrow reveal. Thank you for walking with me through this journey, the journey of Genshu, of stillness, and of yourself. If these stories have touched your heart, please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, like, share, and leave a small comment about how you feel tonight. Sleep peacefully. Let the white thread of mindfulness connect you to a night of gentle rest, and in the morning when you awaken, you'll find the temple within your heart still there, radiant in its silence.